This story is about a knight who just got stabbed for the 17th time by the same person, with the same blade. As he's dying for the 14th time, he feels disappointed in himself, thinking he should have put in more effort. Once he's finally dead, drenched in his own pool of blood, he drifts into a spiritual world. There, he meets an otherworldly entity in a boat, telling him to just give up, as the despair in front of him is a massive wall he cannot climb with his strength. But despite those discouraging words, the knight remains resolute. In the next moment, our hero, Incrid, opens his eyes again to the annoying loud clatter of a pan for the 8th time. While he's sitting up, his companion behind him prepares to start the new day. As he's putting on his shoes, our hero tells him to get the bug out of his shoe before wearing it. The guy, who goes by the name Rem, looks at his shoe and actually finds a bug inside, which he squashes the very next moment he gets it out. After that, the boy just starts to walk off, while the man behind him complains, asking if he is the one who put this critter inside to make a fool out of him. To which, the boy coldly tells him to shut up with the blaming, as he had merely seen the bug crawling inside earlier. Well, can't blame my guy since it's been the 18th time he's seen that poor bug get squashed. But this time, he resolutely steps out, hoping to never see this day again. Before we continue the story, here's a little bit about our hero. You see, Incrid has wielded a sword since he was young, and learned swordsmanship from a retired mercenary who coincidentally came to his village. This one-legged man was quite impressed by Incrid's raw talent and told him that with enough practice, he would surely become a knight. Those words stuck with Incrid for the rest of his life. He never really imagined himself as a knight before, but it was the day he had started dreaming about becoming one. He wanted to become a knight who could slay thousands of people by himself, a knight who could be invincible in wars, a knight who could turn the tide of battle single-handedly. He even started to imagine himself as the protagonist of the songs sung by wandering minstrels. So, he decided to leave the village to pursue his dream of becoming a formidable knight no one had ever seen before. While he was dreaming big, the others just laughed in his face, telling him that the coward who was scared of stray dogs was now dreaming of becoming a knight. Even the boy began to feel inadequate, especially when he left the village and joined a mercenary corps. He began to realize that his talent was nothing special. But he was far from giving up on his dream just because he had not seen any results, and always believed that hard work never betrays anyone. He kept pushing, thinking that even without some special natural-born gift, he could make it big with sheer effort. Failure after failure, he persisted, gaining experience, strength, and stamina. And finally, he started to earn the respect of those around him. That was the case until a child in the village, where our hero was staying, challenged him to a duel and effortlessly bested him. This kid, only 12 years old and having just started learning swordsmanship 6 months ago, made our boy look like a complete novice. The guy who had spent countless hours honing his sword skills to the point of exhaustion just felt more pathetic than ever before in his life. He sank into despair, questioning if all his hard work had been in vain. Still, he persisted, and under the brilliant starry night, he swore to himself that he would become a knight regardless of how many times others belittle him. He promised to devote all his time to wielding the sword, even vowing to spend less time eating and drinking and more time honing his skills. On that day of defeat, he swung his sword restlessly until the sun of the next day arrived. Once he finally stops while gasping for air, he looks at that tree trunk, which is full of cuts. And with a roar of determination, he began to swing his sword once again. Just like that, 3 years passed since the day he was humiliated by that 12-year-old kid. In the present moment, he arrived at the Cyprus Division, which is 4 companies, with 4 platoons each, that each command 4 different squads below them. And our hero became the lucky commander of a so-called second-rate squad, which is by far the best position he has achieved after endless hours of training. But still, he is not complaining, because being a regular soldier of the kingdom is better than being a traveling mercenary. While standing there, he calls over to one of the soldiers, known as Jackson. Once the guy catches sight of our hero, Incrid instructs him to handle the regular morning duty rotation for the day, as he has something else to attend to. Upon hearing this, Jackson shoots our hero an intense glare and simply gets up from his seat, while telling our hero to better return the favor in the future. As the dude walks off, Rem points out how wickedly wild Jackson's gaze was toward our hero. Incrid then calls out to Rem, and upon hearing that call, the big guy immediately asks if he's being roped into some menial task as well. Seems it is not the case, as our hero just wants to learn a technique known as the Heart of the Beast. Rem is totally confused to hear this, considering Incrid had already given up on trying to learn it last time. So, he is naturally curious to know what made Incrid sure that he can pull this off this time. You see, it all started in the Nolilia vs. Aspen close combat battle, where he met his end in the battlefield. Astonishingly enough, he came back to life and began to relive the same day over and over each time he died. Although he learned the Heart of the Beast from Rem each time he came back to life, he still cannot watch the one particular tip of the sword that stabs him in the battlefield. So, after fighting on the same battlefield 20 times, he's now sure that he's going to conquer the battlefield by avoiding death, since he has already completely memorized every scenario or bad step which leads him to his death. Like he already knew in advance that there is a spear about to shoot him, so he dodges it right away. And he also does not forget to dodge that sneaky spear attack which comes from his right side. Not only that, he also knows about the fate of this brave soldier who is fighting his heart out and was about to meet a nasty end. But our hero swoops in just in the nick of time, deflecting the arrow aimed at the poor guy's skull. Then, as if that was not enough, there is this other dude creeping up with a dagger, ready to make matters worse. As expected, our guy jumps in with lightning speed, cleanly slicing the attacker's neck. With that soldier saved from his tragic fate, Incrid has finally achieved his first goal after regressing back for the 21st time. And now, his sights are set on this warrior, who is giving everyone a beating with his sword. Apparently, this guy is the one who has been killing our hero every time he rewinds time, with a good old stab right on the neck, which lands every time without any fail. But this time, the boy is ready to take this guy head on, and he sees sure that he will survive this time. As the killer lunges at the boy menacingly, the scene flashes back to Rem pointing out how Incrid always shuts his eyes tight when danger comes knocking. To prove his point, Rem swings his axe with lightning speed, stopping just before the blade could sever our hero's neck. And yep, you guessed it, Incrid immediately closes his eyes before the axe could make contact. With that reminder, Rem tells him straight that only the brave ones survive on the battlefield, and the rest end up with their heads rolling. He advises Incrid to become a fearless bastard who stares death in the face and goes for the jugular like a wild beast. Showing his heart of a beast that does not fear death, Incrid stares down his opponent and swiftly tilts to avoid the direct hit. With his eyes fixated on that tip of his sword, his heart races with anxiety, as it is the first time he's dodged this bastard's strike after dying for the 20th time. But just when he thinks he's safe, he finds the bastard still coming at him. And in the next moment, his throat is cut clean, blood gushing out like a leaking tap. Once he is dead, he comes back to the same lake, where we see the ghost-like entity in the boat again, urging him to give up, and telling him to acknowledge his weakness and jump into the boat. But once again, Incrid bluntly refuses. With a resolute glint in his eyes and a confident smirk plastered across his face, he gives that ugly motherfucker a piece of his mind, making it clear that the day he surrenders will never come, even if he dies for eternity. His day starts once again, and this time he's feeling confident after finally seeing the tip of that sword and dodging it right away. He is pumped up, feeling like he's at least one step closer, and this time he's going to challenge that bastard head on once again. Moments later, we are back on the battlefield for what seems like the 33rd time for our hero, where we find the boy under attack once more. He can clearly see the tip of the sword, and dodges the first strike as usual. But when that knight charges at Incrid for the second time, he finds his throat cut once again, as he failed to dodge it since the sword is moving way faster than he can react. He falls back on his knees, eventually dying, his necklace also off as its string is cut due to the strike. Before we start the path of trial and error once again, we hit a flashback where our hero shares his experiences working as a mercenary. You see, there was a time when he took on a few requests to subjugate monsters. Well, it was not because he was particularly interested in hunting monsters, but rather he stumbled upon a random village where he was asked for help. The reason he decided to help them was because his dream was to become a knight, and protecting the weak is the first thing that comes with being a knight. Once he cleared out the threat, the villagers handed him a charm since they were too poor to cough up any real cash. Incrid was not exactly thrilled to get a piece of metal as payment after putting his life on the line, but the villager told him that this thing would grant him any wish he desperately wants. In the present moment, before his consciousness fades away, he looks at the same necklace and wonders if this relic might be the reason he's being reincarnated over and over just so he can finally become a knight. His enemy begins to walk towards him, and before our hero could succumb to bleeding out, that monster of a man laughs at our hero's miserable situation and stabs him back once again, as an act of mercy to finally free him from his misery. The boy is in no position to retaliate, so he takes the stab right where it hurts the most, fully aware that this fucker is just a sadist who gets pleasure from stabbing others. In any case, he wakes up to the same clatter of that pan, and before heading out, he tells Rem that he's placed an insect inside his boot, which surely leaves Rem annoyed, using every name in the book to curse our hero. In response, the boy bluntly tells him to shut his yapping and just drag his ass out, as he wants to learn the heart of the beast. Rem stays silent, not sure what this goofball is up to. Eventually, they head outside, where Rem starts swinging his axe at our hero like a madman. He is totally astounded by this sudden change in the boy's resilience, wondering how his skin got thicker out of nowhere. Not surprisingly, Incrid just casually mentions he's been training. Rem points out that mastering the heart of the beast is not a quick learn, and he doubts his family's secret technique would be handed over to just anyone. It seems like our hero's been through this same song and dance 10 times before, and he's slowly but surely learning the heart of the beast after dancing with death so many times. The boy just shrugs it off, wondering aloud what could be so special about this technique, joking that maybe he stumbled upon it by accident. He grabs his sword and challenges Rem to another round of sparring. At first, Rem stays quiet, but then he's all fired up and ready to go. You see, our hero knows that even if he's mastered the heart of the beast, it will not mean squat if he cannot land a hit, and this is precisely why he wants to spar with this axe-wielding barbarian. So, as he dodges his opponent's swings left and right, Rem cannot help but tease him about his dodging skills, wondering if this is the best he can do. Then again, the only sword move he's got in his bag of tricks right now is the Valen mercenary sword technique, an oddball style cooked up by a mercenary named Valen. Some folks might say bad things about it, calling it a cheap trick, but Incrid's convinced it is the best thing he has under his belt. Still, he does not wish to use it right now, and takes his stance to mimic the style of that sadistic knight, who always stabs our hero right on his throat. Rem casually flicks his sword away with a tap of his axe, leaving our hero standing there empty-handed. Once the sword slips from his grasp, he's left staring at his trembling hand. The fact that he was able to pull off that technique is because he's died by that stab more than 10 times, so his body's instincts kicked in. Rem seems a bit overwhelmed too after experiencing that strike firsthand, and even goes as far as to say it is probably the best thing our hero has shown so far, suggesting it could have drawn blood if Incrid had put a bit more strength into it. Rem then encourages him to perfect the technique, and to do that, he should feel confident in himself before swinging his sword, ensuring he does not lose his grip like before. Though Rem's teaching style might be vague, Incrid can understand what he's getting at. That's because the difference between that sadist knight's stance and the stab our hero pulled off is that our hero did not have confidence in his sword, and always got brutally beaten by that maniac. So, he wants to focus on swinging his sword with the full intention to kill. He charges at Rem once again, only to have his sword sent flying with just a flick of Rem's axe. After all that training, he ends up defeated once more, starting his training over again. But then, he finds his neck pierced by that sword once more. He was sure that he would advance forward towards this bastard, even if it is just a quarter of a step. On the 111th day of facing the same bastard, he still finds himself getting killed. But when the 123rd day arrives, he's finally a lot closer to this bastard. And on the 124th day, he finally succeeds and swings his sword perfectly without it getting flung away. His hand bleeds because of the force he exerted, while the maniac just grins shoulder to shoulder. Rem asks what the hell he finds so funny after getting his hand all bruised up. Well, we can't really blame our guy for feeling on top of the world, because after biting the dust so many times, he's finally nailed that sadistic knight stabbing move. So, next time he faces that jerk, he's all in, faster than ever. But, dang it, he misses the mark by just a hair and gets stabbed right back. Then, in the next round, he decides not to even blink, remembering every single move from each sword clash to now. And he still ends up pinned to the ground, with that sadistic jerk laughing at him for his sorry life, raising his sword for the kill. And just before that sword finds its way to our hero's throat, Incrid boldly tells this sadist that he is going to get killed tomorrow. The jerk just smirks and drives the sword into our hero's chest, saying there is no tomorrow for the dead. The next day starts, with the same squashing of that bug. It is kind of funny how my guy's trying to change his fate, but every time, the poor bug always ends up dead. Don't you think it deserves a chance at life too? Anyway, when he startles Rem by squashing that bug, he thanks our hero for letting him know there was a bug inside its boot. To which, the boy casually tells him to do him a favor by taking his guard duty for the day. Rem's totally out of the loop, wondering why in the world this guy's ordering him around like it is no big deal. This is the 125th day for our hero, and before heading into the battlefield, he turns to this red-headed boy and orders him to bring some shin armor, a shield, and a dagger, and as for the money, well, he will pay them back later. The redhead is not too thrilled about giving his stuff on credit, but he's got to follow orders since our hero is the boss, so the junior have no choice other than to make some exceptions, even though he does not usually do favors. Rem jumps in too, noticing how Incrid's been getting pushy lately. The guy sitting down then points out that Rem's always shoving his own tasks onto Incrid, so he's not sure why he's being such a hypocrite. In response to this, my guy fires back with his own sass, asking the guy if he's itching to taste his axe. Moving on, Rem's confused why our hero's looking a bit weird since he does not usually look that way. In the following scene, we catch Incrid swinging his sword over a tree trunk, blowing off some steam. He is reflecting on the pain of each fatal stab, and feeling a bit hopeless about whether he will ever come out on top, even after countless tries. He ponders what if he could break free and actually survive. Would he wake up to a new day or the same old loop? He realizes he's stronger now than ever, but questions if that is enough. But then, he shakes off the doubt, and he is determined to smash through this wall of despair, and refuses to pass up the chance to master and make himself further stronger to bounce back every time he falls short. With a resolute nod, he slices that tree clean in half with his bare sword, showing he's ready to carve his own path forward. With resolve in his heart, he straps himself with gear, dons his armor, and is now fully ready after equipping his shield. Once the horns begin to bellow, marking the start of the battle, the other soldiers follow our hero to the battlefield, and in the next moment, the battle starts. He reflects on how he has managed to survive this battle because of three fundamental things, which are preparation, luck, and a cool head. Looking back, he recalls how his shoulder was shattered by a spiked mace on the 46th day, but on the 47th day, he was able to roll to dodge the mace. However, someone else then crushed his head, so this time, he took down the person who did that to him in the past. On the 71st day, a soldier down low cut his foot off, rendering him unable to do much, let alone stab that sadistic knight. That is why he's got his armor, which came in handy, saving his leg from getting sliced. In return, he delivers a terrifying blow to the attacker. Then, on the 89th day, his head was split open by somebody who threw his axe. He is pretty sure if he let this soldier live this time, he is surely going to get interrupted during he is going to face that sadist stabber. So, to deal with this guy, my man's already trained himself in throwing weapons countless times, so it is not that difficult for him. Once he's done dealing with those goons, there is also a colleague of his who is going to end up dying. So, he immediately butts in and saves his fellow soldier, cutting down the opponent's neck like a cucumber. After all those stair steps, time has come for him to face his final wall of despair. The soldiers shoot each other cold killer glances before starting a match which can be called a duel at this point. As they stride towards each other, the sadist starts gaining momentum. When he swings his sword, Incrid manages to dodge the worst of it, but the blow demolishes his shield. Realizing just dodging and stabbing will not cut it, our hero decides to mix it up with some old-fashioned brawling before pulling out his trump card. As their swords clash, Incrid can feel the sadist's massive strength. Despite being just a regular soldier, this dude packs more punch than some high-level commanders. And since he's just an ordinary soldier, he lacks fighting experience. Taking that cue, my guy surprises this bastard with a head smash right into his chest. After shoving him back, Incrid leaps into the air, coming down hard with sword aimed at this fucker. Meanwhile, the sadist goes for his usual stabbing move, only for our hero to dodge it like a pro. Once the opponent misses his swing, he finds himself mad as a hornet, and swings right back at our hero. It is crunch time for Incrid, time to put all that learning from his endless time loops to use. With a quick flick of his sword, he surprisingly disarms his opponent, by shattering the sword into pieces. Then, there is this archer aiming straight at our hero. While the sadist knight is frozen in shock after losing his weapon, probably realizing he's fucking screwed, Incrid gets ready to face the next threat, and he seems totally unaware of the arrow coming straight for his back. In that critical moment, we also see an axe spinning through the air, taking down the arrow just before it can hit its mark. Meanwhile, our hero successfully pierces the bastard's throat after days of struggle. Let us not forget about the legend who threw that axe with such precision to stop the arrow. He is the one who made it possible for our hero to finally get his revenge. While the battle rages on, my guy seizes his moment of glory and stands right before his opponent, taking deep breaths while sweating profusely. He then looks back at the guy below who is losing blood with every passing moment. Incrid lifts his sword up once again, ready to finish this guy off completely. Once he's ready with his sword, he tells the bastard that this is a little mercy from him, and with those words, he swings his sword, leaving his opponent's head swinging in the air like a football. With the victory finally in the bag, Incrid feels the rush of excitement, which leaves him smiling in the midst of this chaotic battle. Looks like he's finally broken through the wall of despair that was holding him back, so he is actually thrilled to finally step forward to the path of becoming a formidable knight. Or so he thought, because his pleasant moment of victory shatters completely when he finds himself taking a clean hit from behind, which leaves him falling to the ground and squirming in pain like an injured animal. His platoon members, Rem in particular, immediately rush toward his leader. And this guy who has just entered the battlefield, known as Frog, is sending a chill of terror through everyone with his mere presence. While our hero is down for the count, this green bastard sneaks up on him, expressing his disappointment for killing his beloved pet, whom this Frog had trained for many days, and seeing his dog without his head really pisses the hell out of him. As the boy grunts in pain, the villain swings his sword again, and before he can finish off Incrid, Rem immediately blocks his way, and swings back his axe right at the ugly mug of that bastard, which is instantly blocked by this froggy foe. Hence, their back and forth begins, and they start trading blows left and right. Meanwhile, some other soldier dude tries to sneak up on the boy with a spear, only to lose his own head in the process by our hero's other companion. At the same time, Rem and the frog dude take a breather by stepping back after their intense exchange of blows. Rem seizes the moment for some casual banter, letting this froggy fellow know that if he's planning on lopping off our hero's head, he better ask for permission first. The froggy guy is bewildered to learn that Incrid is actually their squad commander, who he considers a weakling compared to his standards. He reckons Rem should be calling the shots, given his strength. Despite all his tough talk, it seems Rem's actually scared witless, because these warrior frogs are born to fight, and he's pretty sure he will either have to incinerate this froggy foe with magic or skewer its heart in a single strike. On the flip side, the froggy enemy is curious to know why such a formidable man is duking it out in this trashy battlefield. While Rem is ready to give it his all against this green bastard, the scumbag decides to retreat, figuring that battling our axe-wielding hero would be too much of a hassle. As this second-rate Walmart version of an avatar turns his tail, Rem calls him a coward for moving out from the battlefield. Meanwhile, another enemy soldier is about to strike one of our squad members, but Rem jumps in and severs the bastard's head like it is no big deal. The chaotic battle continues, and our hero's companions dominate the entire battlefield. Seeing these formidable soldiers, the opposing party freaks out and immediately decides to retreat. With the battle over and the cowardly soldiers running away, our hero starts drifting into unconsciousness, finding himself back at that familiar lake. There, the ghost reappears, reminding our hero that even though he survived today, the wall of despair will keep appearing in his path. The only chance he has in life, according to the ghost, is to despair and give up finally. The boy stands up from the floor, making it clear that this wall only exists for him as an obstacle begging to be overcome. The ghost sneers, pointing out that he will be waiting for the moment when our hero's eyes, filled with greed and ambition, completely lose their light. In the next moment, the dude wakes back up from his deep slumber. Looks like he is in pretty bad shape, and that is why he ended up in the infirmary tent. Suddenly, Rem appears in the scene telling our hero that he had been sleeping for 2 straight days. While Incrid tries to sit on his bed, nursing his spinning head, Rem casually reminds him that he was the one who saved Incrid's ass from that frog. Incrid has no clue what hit him at that time, but he's amazed to be alive, given how messed up that attack he got struck was. Rem then mentions that his bones are intact, but his head got shaken up pretty badly. Teasingly, the dude then asks if Incrid remembers his best friend who saved his life. To which, Incrid coldly shrugs, saying he never considered Rem a friend, as he is nothing more than just a noble hunter in his eyes. Suddenly, Rem puts his hand on Incrid's mouth, telling him to shut up. Once Rem is sure there is no one around, he tells Incrid to watch his mouth and not spill secrets in public, especially since our hero has nothing to do with it. In response, Incrid then reminds him how they can be called best friends if he is supposed to mind his own business. Looks like this all being a noble hunter seems to be a really big thing, especially seeing how Rem was worked up after being called like that. A new day finally dawns on our hero's life after getting killed multiple times and reincarnated. Inside one of the tents, we meet the redhead again, named Cries, who is complaining about how much cash he had to shell out to get Incrid into the infirmary. He lets the boy know that he better pony up 3 times the price for all the trouble. Now, it makes sense to our hero why a regular soldier like him, who would have been left to rot on the battlefield, ended up in the infirmary tent. The boy then points out that Cries was probably hiding somewhere during the battle since he was never seen out in the field, and as a commander, that is really concerning. But the redhead just gets all gleeful, flashing smiles while offering our hero a special discount and telling him to just pay back double. A while later, we also meet another member of the 4th squad known as Jackson. This mostly silent boy stands near our hero quietly. Incrid asks him if he has something to say, and Jackson simply tosses him some kind of medicine before leaving the tent, advising Incrid to apply it twice a day. Upon closer inspection, Incrid realizes it is the same ointment Jackson used to use. He is startled to see Jackson giving away his possessions, as he knows Jackson naturally hates sharing personal items. Next up, we meet another 4th squad member named Auden. Gotta admit, seeing this jacked up dude crying his eyes out is really creeping me out. Even Incrid does not seem to like this whiny guy, telling him to leave since our hero is feeling better than ever. As night falls, the boy finds himself lost in his own thoughts, pondering why everyone is suddenly trying to cozy up to him, which makes him wonder if it is because they are actually worried about him. Suddenly, another guy enters the scene. When he spots our hero, he refers to him as a commander and asks what he's doing here. This guy is Ragna, also a member of the 4th squad as well. He quickly exits the tent while munching on his delicious bread, and seeing him go without exchanging pleasantries, Incrid is sure this guy could not care less about him. Besides our hero, there are 2 other soldiers in the infirmary tent. One is a platoon commander from another company who used to pick fights with our boy, and the other is a soldier whose name he does not know, spending his time staring into space. Incrid is sure this man is a low-ranking soldier, so he's naturally curious how he ended up here, since being treated in infirmary is a luxury, only reserved for high-ranking soldiers. Suddenly, the sound of thudding footsteps echoes in the area, and in strides a giant lady clad in armor, with those pair of pointy ears. Without wasting any time, she demands to know who is the commander of the 4th squad of the 4th company. This completely confuses our hero, who has no clue what is going on, and just nods his head along in confusion. The others are bewildered too, and someone loudly blurts out if she is a fairy. The woman then asks this loudmouth which group he belongs to, and he responds that he's Vengeance, the commander of the 3rd platoon in the 2nd company. She sternly reminds him that his company should have taught him better manners than to address their superior by their race name. The man bows his head and humbly apologizes, realizing his mistake. Meanwhile, Incrid wonders to himself if the 4th platoon has got a new commander, and finally responds to her previous query, introducing himself as part of the 4th squad of the 4th company and 4th platoon. Once the introductions are done, she gets to the point, mentioning that she has heard he's leading a difficult squad really well and looks forward to his continued service. With those words, the woman proceeds to leave the tent, leaving our hero bewildered if she came all this way just to say that much. Suddenly, she stops and turns around, asking the silent one about his name. The man hesitates before responding, but eventually, with a suspicious tone, introduces himself as Krang. And Crid can clearly see through it, realizing the man just pulled that name out of thin air, which makes him wonder if he's some kind of noble trying to hide his identity. Looks like even the lady is not convinced with the name either, but she leaves nonetheless without questioning anything, which surely leaves our hero intrigued by her mysterious behavior. The next day arrives, and we see our hero doing some hand-stretching exercises, while muttering to himself that his pain has subsided, and he can get back to the grind to regain his lost strength. He dresses himself, and when the guy behind him asks where he's going, Crid simply responds that he's headed to the training area. Of course, this guy just sneers at our hero, mocking how he's acting tough when he's just a low-ranking soldier. Nonetheless, the boy could not care less about this goon's words and just walks out of the place, while the blondie also silently watches him go. Once he's out in the field, he picks up his sword and decides to recall the past battle. It is one of the few useful methods he spent loads of money to learn when he was young. He keeps in mind that relying solely on one technique could spell disaster, as even the failure of one attack might lead to his demise. Just as he's pondering his next move, the blondie shows up, not caring what our hero is up to. But he is curious why he was zoning out so much inside the infirmary, and also noticed our hero twitching in the earlier, and now he's just here spacing out. Our hero explains he was just training his grip strength, and right now he is trying to replicate the battle in his mind. The blondie presses for the reason behind it all, to which the boy simply replies he's just aiming not to get killed. In response, the blondie questions if he's trying to achieve something by living longer. We also know our hero's greatest dream is to become a great knight, and whenever he says something about his dream, people just laugh at him. Even though he's become a notable knight after all these years, he vows never to stop striving for the best. With a dramatic flourish, he lays it out that he wants to become a knight, and his sudden response leaves the blondie momentarily speechless. Naturally, the boy curiously looks toward the silent man, mentioning that it is the first time he's seen someone who did not laugh at him for his ridiculous dream. The newcomer then stands up from his seat and starts strolling off, telling our hero that he's understood something after watching him, so he's taking a walk. Meanwhile, Crid stands there, totally caught off guard, as this is the first time someone has not laughed at his dream. In fact, the blondie turns around one last time and tells our hero to remember his name once he becomes a knight. The next day arrives. Soldiers are having the time of their lives, while a wandering minstrel sings the stories of legends who died in the battlefields. On the other hand, there is this loudmouth once again, who is whining in the background, complaining about the rations still not being here, wondering if the army chief wants everyone to starve to death. On the other hand, our hero is doing his own thing. After waking up to the wandering minstrel and waiting for the delayed breakfast, he takes a short leisurely walk instead of heading to the training area. While on his walk, he stumbles upon Jackson, who asks if the medicine worked correctly. The boy confirms it did, expressing gratitude for the remedy, to which Jackson simply advises him to get more rest if he wants to be truly thankful. The day passes by in a blur, and everyone settles into their beds. The blondie wishes our hero a good night, and the boy reciprocates the gesture. However, it seems our hero is not actually having a good night, because he is annoyed to find that all he does nowadays is go to sleep early, spending his days doing nothing. The next day arrives, and the boy wakes up to the same annoying shouts of the wandering minstrel singing that trashy song, while the loudmouth is also yelling about the morning rations being late. Chills run down the boy's spine as he realizes it is all the same as yesterday. He does not want to believe he's repeating the same day, but his suspicions are confirmed when he meets Jackson and they have the same chat about the medicine. There is no doubt now that it is the same day he is living once again. His mind then flashes back to that ghost, warning him about another wall appearing, and he better try to survive this one too. And Crid's mind is spinning with the realization that he's probably reliving the same day as yesterday, which only means that he died without noticing. Well, it seems this challenge is going to be tougher than the previous ones where he simply died from getting stabbed. As night descends once again, the boy lies in bed, pondering who might be behind his repeated deaths. The enemy would need to get through all the defenses to reach him, which suggests they must be a skilled knight, and it is unlikely there is an assassin hidden among the soldiers. He starts drawing up a mental image of who might be the culprit, someone who knows the location of the medical barracks and can conceal their presence, someone skilled in assassination. And after careful consideration, one person pops into his mind. Yep, it is that fairy lady. Given her quiet and nimble feet, the boy is sure she is perfect for assassinations. The fact that she visited our boy a day ago only confirms his suspicions. She likely just wanted to scope out the barracks location. While she is on the move, Crid decides to wait for her to arrive, planning to scream once she enters the room. But before he senses her sneaking in, he feels a poison needle pierce his neck. Immediately, he starts writhing in pain, his body growing cold and immobile. And not just him, the other soldiers also succumb to the poison before they even realize what is happening. That is why our hero died last night, even without knowing what hit him. He cannot move a single muscle as the assassin proceeds to shove his sword down, killing the blondie right away, who does not even get the chance to see another morning in his life. Suddenly, someone tears down the cloth of that tent by the sword, and another assassin pops into the scene. When the boy takes a closer look at this newcomer, he sees those pointy ears and that same fancy wand, which leaves no room for doubts that she is definitely her. The next day rolls around, and we are greeted by the same loud wandering minstrel singing his song, leaving our hero wide awake due to his awful singing. This marks the third time in a row. Even though he's staying alert, he could not detect the assassin's presence last time. Not to mention, the company commander is also part of this execution plan. Even if he manages to stop those assassins, he's pretty sure he will have to face the company commander right after. By now, he's feeling pretty hopeless, especially because he does not want to repeat these days like he did when he was getting stabbed to death on the battlefield. Still, he does not forget how he chopped off that bastard's head and claimed victory for himself. So, he's sure he will find his way out of this mess too. Suddenly, he grabs one of the soldiers' blankets, pulling it off them, leaving the always annoyed soldier further agitated, who asks our hero if he's trying to get on everyone's nerves. As he jolts the man awake, he realizes he was wrong to assume the assassin would have infiltrated the base already, so he decides to keep an eye on the outside. Meanwhile, the cocky guy asks our hero if he's going to catch cockroaches for today's training, mocking his efforts and mentioning it is fitting for a lowlife like him. The boy startles him by asking why he's so obsessed with him. In response, the man sneers, saying he was just messing around and tells our hero to just chill out as he does not even want to see our hero's face. The blondie then joins the scene, and seeing them bickering as usual, he asks if he should come back later. But Incrid tells him to come in, while the dickhead just lounges back and starts mouthing off at both of them. Seems like our hero has figured out that this blondie must be their main target, since that fairy was giving him the eagle eye. Plus, this dude seems shady at first glance, and Incrid has no clue about his background. Incrid does not want to pry into something the other guy is not willing to divulge, just like his other eccentric platoon members. But since this blondie is the reason our hero got roped into this mess, he decides to finally ask him to get any clues about the situation. So, the idiot bluntly blurts out, asking, "What are you?" Of course, this short sentence goes right over the blondie's head, who looks utterly clueless. Seeing that puzzled look on the blondie's face makes Incrid doubt if he chose his words poorly. Still, the mysterious man acknowledges our hero's question and starts thinking about what he might actually be. A second later, he tells them he does not feel comfortable spilling anything about himself. The boy counters, asking why this might be, to which the mysterious man just brushes off, saying it is a long story. Hearing this, the boy goes silent, nodding in acknowledgement, and decides to honor his privacy. But this does not sit well with the dickhead, who curses our hero, asking if he wants to accept that kind of answer he should not have pried in the first place. This annoying loudmouth turns to Blondie then, insisting that this wannabe mysterious man is definitely not from around here, especially judging by his manners and how he talks. He even goes as far as accusing him of being a spy from another country. At this, the blonde guy just shoots this annoying dude a cold and expressionless look, and the next moment, the loudmouth is biting his tongue, realizing he's in over his head. Krang then starts walking mysteriously towards the dickhead, making it clear that he has not and never will betray the kingdom. Incrid begins to catch on to who this person might be, especially noting his allegiance and the vibes he gives off, similar to those of a knight. On the other hand, the loudmouth feels intimidated after speaking with this man, because he is sensing that this blondie talks as if he holds a higher authority. Meanwhile, the boy retracts his earlier assumption about this blondie being a knight, because, apparently, if Krang were truly a knight, he would not have been so helpless against the assassins, but he is sure in one thing that this man is definitely hiding something. Once the night settles, they offer each other final goodnights, and that is when the boy notices a slight change in the dickhead's behavior. Maybe he's scared of Krang after their earlier interaction. In any case, Incrid takes a look towards the tent's opening, and decides to go outside, since staying here is just going to bring their deaths. As he's strolling outside, the dickhead calls out to him from behind, asking why he's going outside instead of sleeping. To which, the boy bluntly states that assassins are going to invade the tent soon, so he would advise him to cooperate as much as he can if he wants to survive this night. Of course, the dickhead does not believe our hero, and simply gets back under the cozy blanket after calling him stupid. Seeing both of them just dozing off despite the warning, Incrid is not really disappointed, because he kinda expected them to act all nonchalant about it. Suddenly, he hears a voice, and before he can react, some sharp object from behind just slices his throat before he can even blink. The blood gushed out fast, and he did not even get the chance to draw his sword. Meanwhile, the annoying loudmouth also takes a sharp dart to the neck. The blondie finds a sharp sword thrust into his chest, while our poor boy falls to the ground lifeless. With that, he's back at square one after getting assassinated for the 4th time. What is even tougher is that since there is no evidence of an looming threat, he will not be able to get help from anyone. So, he decides to remain vigilant and keep an eye out for when the assassins appear, ready to shout to grab everyone's attention. Just as he's waiting for the perfect opportunity to scream, he feels his throat getting pierced once again. And once the boy has lost his vocal cords, the assassin barges inside. The next time arrives, and he decides to ambush those assassins at the perfect timing. But once again, he ends up taking a sharp dart right into his throat, rendering his attempt to ambush them useless since he cannot even identify his enemies. When he faces those assassins once again, we see that assassin bastard standing right behind our hero, and he pierces the man's throat with just a single stroke. Another day rolls around, marking the 20th morning for our hero, and he finds himself utterly hopeless after failing for the 20th time in a row. But then, as usual, a creepy smirk starts to creep across his face, mentioning how he's only died 20 times, which is just a rookie number compared to previous times. So, to face off against those bitches, he decides to think of a way to avoid the poison needle first, and evade their attacks faster than even they can see. When he thinks about quick reflexes and fast speed, the only person that comes to mind is Jackson. He is fast to the point that even someone like Rem calls him a fast, perverted wildcat, although he is not sure about the perverted part. As such, when Incrid asks Rem about the reason he remembers Jackson with such crude remarks, the dude simply mentions that he's a dirty, perverted retard who never tires of fighting his enemies head-on, and enjoys more by backstabbing them and running off. And whenever he sees him before his eyes, all Rem can think of is a cunning wildcat. When our hero approaches Jackson himself, the junior immediately asks his commander if his injuries are doing okay. Meanwhile, our hero's mind is occupied with himself as he tries to evaluate the situation. He realizes that Jackson is definitely the one who can go against those assassins, but he cannot just take him inside the tent since our hero's rank as platoon commander does not give him that much authority. Still, he can't just give up on climbing up this wall of despair just because of one obstacle in the way. So, he finally comes to terms with himself and decides to become Jackson himself. As he approaches, Incrid casually asks what he will have to do to stop someone from ambushing him from behind, especially if his enemy has reflexes like Jackson himself. The brownhead immediately gets into thinking and then confusingly responds that he can't really help him dodge anything since no one has ever survived his ambush. Well, looks like our hero is in bigger shit than he initially thought, seeing Incrid standing there with a face like a lost puppy. Jackson probably feels compelled and eventually lets out a big sigh before telling our hero that in order to block an ambush, he's gotta grow a pair of eyes right behind his head. Of course, Incrid is curious about what the hell that even means, so he asks how he can grow a pair of balls on the back of his head. That is when Jackson points out a wagon nearby, located behind the tent. Naturally, Incrid had never noticed the carriage there until now, which makes him wonder if Jackson actually has eyes on the back of his head. But the real jaw-dropping moment is not just that Jackson knew about the carriage, it is that he predicted it would fall apart, and behold, one of the carriage wheels promptly lets loose. Incrid is left in astonishment, marveling at Jackson's seemingly prophetic abilities, and starts to wonder if Jackson can see through everyone like he's some sort of prophet. With a shrug, the brownhead advises Incrid to stop spending so much time with that barbarian Rem. Incrid, wanting real answers, tells Jackson to cut the nonsense and just explain how he knew about the carriage. That is when Jackson calmly explains that he heard creaking from the wagon's axle. In simpler words, if he can hear what is around him, he can predict what is going to happen next, and elaborates that he does not really need to see to sense what is happening around him. While standing up, he advises our hero to keep trying to listen to what is around him to practice, further tells him to hone his senses and isolate the sounds. Incrid is quite surprised to hear this thorough and easy explanation of the technique, given that Jackson seemed reluctant to acknowledge our hero's presence before. In his defense, Jackson just says he's just pretty lazy. Still, Jackson mainly explained it just because our hero stopped pestering him, especially because nowadays Incrid seems like a different person who just does not want to give up on anything. As the night descends, and our hero lies on his bed, he reflects on how he has finally come across his second wall, which is in the form of faceless death. But he now at least knows he has a way to see the next day, simply by sensing the assassins through his ears. Under normal circumstances, he can hear the regular footsteps of patrols and the sound of torches, but he cannot seem to pick up the sound of the assassin. Before he can sense any voices he desires, his throat is pierced by the needle once again, leaving the boy grunting in pain. Another disappointing day rolls around without any progress. But it is not all bad news. At least he is now carrying more experience than ever before. Just like the other day, he seeks out Jackson for advice. And well, the junior explains how our hero can gather information from sounds alone. And by doing this, he can also determine the location of something based on the intensity and direction of the sound. Once he's able to hear faint, distant sounds, his ears might as well be his second set of eyes. Jackson then snaps his fingers and mentions that sound is a wave, which is spreading out in all directions. So, even in the chaos of thousands of sound waves mixed together, he advises our hero to isolate a single wave to pinpoint his target. Keeping that advice in mind, he starts focusing on his surroundings. At first, he hears the useless chatter of the soldiers nearby, but then he concentrates, categorizes, and isolates the sounds. He pinpoints his attention towards the flags, but they still sound like one large flag to him, nothing extraordinary. Then, he can also hear the parade of the soldiers. Just as he's getting into his concentration, the blondie arrives on the scene, asking our hero what kind of training he's doing. While talking, he also starts labeling our hero with the nickname Insai, which is not exactly something our hero appreciates. But since he's not in the mood to argue, he lets it slide. And as for Krang's original question, the boy simply lets him know that he's just sitting there like an idiot, which definitely cannot be called training. Well, Krang is not buying this, since he's pretty sure that our guy is not one to waste his time just sitting around. But as soon as the night arrives, he takes that sharp needle right into his throat again. When the boy looks in the other direction, Krang also meets his tragic end with a sword piercing his heart. The 33rd day has arrived, yet it is another failure. The 34th day is just a bust, where he clearly fails to hear his opponent. After so many failures, Incrid finds himself concentrating while sitting alone at the beginning of every new day. He wants more experience to overcome this wall, and he's sure that he will do it without any divine intervention or stroke of luck, but with pure dedication and hard work. As usual, his training is interrupted by the blondie, who finds him surprised that our hero immediately noticed him sneaking up on him, as if the boy already knew he would be there even though he had his eyes closed. And once again, their argument ends with the blondie noting how Incrid is not the type to waste his time idly. When night falls, and the assassins infiltrate the area, our hero easily dodges the needle by tilting his head in the other direction. He swiftly pulls out his dagger and swings it at the assassin's face, finally seeing the terrified expression of his enemy after countless deaths. No longer is the enemy a faceless death. Seeing our hero smirking like this totally annoys the bastard, and he retaliates instantly. Incrid can tell that this man is not really as good in combat as that stabbing sadist knight, so he is sure that he can handle this man alone. However, that is not the only thing our hero has to take into account. The loudmouth dickhead already died, and the blondie might as well be seeing his death soon. Still, the boy does not want to let his guard down. After all, this dude is still an experienced assassin. So, the boy practices caution, and when the assassin throws the dagger, it still ends up slitting our hero's chest. As he regains his balance, Incrid finally sees the fairy gracing the scene with her presence. He immediately charges at her, intending to stab her before she can stab him. However, the assassin quickly throws sharp needles in every direction, aiming to hit everyone, while the boy just still attempts to land a hit on the lady, which is easily avoided by her. On the other hand, the fairy uses her robe as a makeshift barrier to avoid being directly affected by the needles, thus saving the blondie from dying. Well, this comes as a great surprise to Incrid, who initially thought the woman was an assassin. Instead, she came here to protect them. Taking advantage of the situation, Incrid charges toward the man with his dagger in hand. The assassin, in an attempt to save himself, brings his dagger before him, but the force of the impact sends him flung backward. As the assassin struggles against our hero, he seizes the opportunity to flee, leaving Incrid standing there. Krang then approaches from behind, noticing that the assassin seemed to be targeting him. Incrid acknowledges this, noting that he was already aware of it. The blondie questions how Incrid knew about the assassination attempt. In response, the boy points out that nobody would hire an assassin to target a commoner like him, so it's safe to assume that Blondie must be their target. The fairy appears to agree, and she also seems impressed by Incrid's excellent agility. On the other hand, our hero remains suspicious of her remains despite her previous actions, thinking she might be concealing her alliance with the assassin. It is wise for him to keep his guard up and his sword ready in case she tries anything shady. Meanwhile, the blondie expresses his desire to prevent this before anyone gets killed because of him. On the flip side, our hero stays silent while the lady just nods in respect towards the blondie, saying as you wish. Krang then further mentions that he does not want this loudmouth to meet his end here either. The lady assures him once again, stating that they can save him with an antidote she conveniently has. Not sure why this lady is acting so respectful towards this blondie, but let us hope we find out soon enough about who this noble man might be. Meanwhile, Incrid gets even more suspicious. I mean, she knows about the antidote too, sounds fishy to me. Krang then decides to clean up the mess before anyone gets wind that there was an assassin lurking around, as it might cause discomfort among the soldiers, and the only way they can think of removing any possible traces is by setting the camp on fire. In the next moment, we see the tent torched with blazing fire, and the soldiers desperately carry water in buckets and rush towards the fire, while that dickhead lay there unconscious, and our hero can be seen coughing from the smoke. Incrid reassuringly stands up as he sees the soldiers rushing about, pretty sure his work is done and they will handle the rest. The scene then cuts to Blondie, walking down a lonely path. The lady beside him mentions that if our hero had not slowed down the assassin, Krang would have died by now. She then asks him if he changed his mind about going back just because of that one soldier. Krang simply replies with a yes, leaving the lady in silence momentarily. Krang stops for a moment, reflecting on our hero with a positive image, and mutters to himself about how Incrid's personality had this positive impact on him. And now he's looking forward to meeting him again when they both have reached the pinnacle of what they are trying to achieve the most. In the following scene, we see a scythe, which turns into dust in the next moment. Back at the river, the ghost appears again, telling our hero that they will meet again, to which the boy responds positively. While it is unclear who he's referring to, whether the blondie or the assassin, we are going to assume our hero is going to meet the blondie. The next day arrives, and our hero has finally overcome the gruesome night that had him stuck for several days. Thanks to this experience, he can now sense the presence of most things, though he could not sense the lady, so he's determined to perfect his hearing technique when he returns. And thankfully, since he's not severely hurt, he can head back immediately. Suddenly, we catch a sight of this loudmouth once again, who appears to be still grumpy as ever, asking our hero why did he save him from fire last night. It is clear to see that this guy is giving Incrid a hard time for saving his sorry hide, which genuinely piques Incrid's curiosity as to why this man harbors such hate towards him. However, Incrid simply walks away, stating that he saved him because they are comrades, and there is no deeper reason than that. The dickhead, feeling a bit ashamed of himself after witnessing Incrid's kind-hearted gesture, musters the courage to ask why Incrid is acting this way despite all the shit he's given him. While he keeps his walk, Incrid responds with a simple yes when he is asked if he's returning to his squad. The loudmouth then mentions that he would rather Incrid not return to his tent. When Incrid asks if something bad happened there, the man cryptically brings up rumors about the entire base being cursed, hinting that Incrid will soon find out why. In the following scene, our hero's squad member, whom I forgot the name of, is getting cocky, calling Rem an underdeveloped monkey and even pushing him aside. But, as expected, Rem just smirks at the cockiness, effortlessly lifting the guy into the air with his bare hands. The panic erupts among soldiers as they scatter around for their lives. One of the soldiers even points out how the 4th squad is getting all rowdy ever since their squad leader has been out of commission. Rem then tosses his team member away, leaving him crashing into wooden crates. But the guy bounces back and delivers a good head smash with a wooden plank right over Rem's head. In response, Rem delivers a jaw-busting punch right to the face. Once they step back, they exchange threats, with the axe-wielding hero boasting about how he is surely going to snag some new skulls to decorate his tent, and the other promising to cut the barbarian in half with his sword. Finally, the squad leader arrives on the scene, who takes a deep sigh at the sight of these fools causing ruckus once again. He steps forward and tells them to stop causing trouble. Seeing their boss enter, they express shock, asking if he was not supposed to be dead by now. To which, the boy simply responds that he might actually go crazy if he keeps up with this squad of hobos. The next day arrives, and it's been 4 days since our hero returned to his squad. Suddenly, he's rudely interrupted by someone barging in abruptly. It looks like Jackson was not trying to disrupt our hero's sleep, so he apologizes if he did. Incrid reassures his junior, telling him that he was already about to wake up to go work out anyway. Jackson then points out how, even though it's only been a few days of training, Incrid has already become really good at picking up sound waves. Well, you cannot blame Jackson for noticing that. It might be only a few days for him, but our hero has already been training for months. Whatever the case, Jackson finishes the conversation by encouraging Incrid to keep it up, as this technique will surely come in handy on the battlefield. The scene cuts to outside, where we see our hero is cranking out pull-ups. Meanwhile, the narrator, who is me of course, explains that battles nowadays are few and far between because of the approaching winter, which gives our hero plenty of spare time to work out and train. Once he's finished exercising and catches his breath, he meets another squad member. This guy is in the middle of an intense push-up routine with a giant boulder on his back. Despite sweating profusely, he manages to greet his commander and strikes up a casual conversation, asking how his workouts are going lately. Our hero stays silent, watching as the junior drops the boulder to the ground. When he stands up, he looks like the second coming of Giga Chad, towering over our hero and making him look like a puny punk in comparison. The guy then tells our hero that a muscular body is a man's weapon, and Incrid should work hard to turn his thin frame into muscle. The boy stays composed and simply tells his junior that he will give it a shot, though in his mind, he would rather not get excessively huge like him. Meanwhile, Rem and Ragna from before are still throwing down, with Rem trying to crush his squad member's bones under his huge body weight. And while doing so, Rem supports a cocky grin over his face, telling his squad member to get off his lazy butt and do his duty instead of lounging like a lazy snake under the blazing sun. Once Ragna slips away from Rem's grip, he grabs his sword and swings it toward our axe-wielding hero, while suggesting Rem something about eating dog crap. Seeing this, Rem tightens his grip on his axe as well, ready for a fight. But before things escalate further, our hero steps in, telling them to knock it off. Meanwhile, the muscle-bound warrior behind our hero just continues to pray, as is his usual custom, like any good Christian would. That is when Rem points his finger at punching bag, telling our hero that his slacking off behavior is going to leave them starving at this rate. Hearing this, the boy simply tells Ragna to perform his duty of cooking if it's his turn. Well, Ragna seems to have no choice but to comply with his commander's order, and Rem gladly hands over the apron while showing his friend the way to the kitchen. Of course, Ragna annoyingly flings Rem's hand away, making it clear that he's not wearing an apron that is fully stinking of barbarian smell. Although Rem feels annoyed, he sniffs the apron and surprisingly finds it smell rather tasty. Meanwhile, Incrid advises his junior not to pick fights for no reason just because he's feeling bored. Rem just smirks, saying the lack of battles nowadays is making him itch for more fights and he cannot resist the urge. To which, our hero tells him to stop picking on random dudes and invites him to spar instead, just to satisfy his cravings. Outside under the gloomy sky, they dive straight into exchanging blows, with Rem clearly relishing every moment of the fight. For Incrid, it's a chance to put his training into action, to test himself and see where he stands. He remains composed, cool as a cucumber, not flinching as he utilizes his enhanced hearing to anticipate and block Rem's attacks. Finally, he sees an opening and goes for the sword stabbing technique he's practiced tirelessly for hundreds of hours. But Rem is too quick and dodges the stab and counter with his axe. In a swift move, he grabs Incrid by the collar, flings him down, and pins him to the ground. Rem expresses his disappointment, expecting our hero to show more skills since he's been improving rapidly. He wonders why our hero suddenly seems like a schlub, and asks if he's not bored of his old stabbing technique already. Incrid remains silent as usual, then stands up while reflecting on how he can achieve anything now by repeating days until he's perfected himself. So, he tells this obnoxious dude to come forward and get ready for obliteration. Rem is naturally confused to see our hero's confidences, because he sees nothing more than a competent brat before him, lacking fundamental skills. Still, he smirks, especially after seeing our hero's resolute eyes, and he is sure he will not be disappointed in the fight. With a sassy tone, Rem fires back, inviting our hero to bring it on and warning him that he will not be held responsible if things get messy. But before they can square off, the rain starts pouring down heavily, sending them both scurrying back to their tents. Inside, Rem is trying to dry off his soaked feet, while the rest of the squad members are busy with their own tasks. Muscle Man's deep in prayer, and Ragnar's doing his usual slacking off. Then, the redhead enters camp, annoyed that his duel got cancelled because of the rain. He grumbles loudly about how this place might actually be cursed after all. Hearing this, our hero gets confused and asks what kind of curse he's talking about. Suddenly, his mind flashes back to the moment when Loudmouth said the same thing about their camp being cursed. The redhead adds that the weather's acting weird, and casualties are rising up, especially in Jack's crew. They are all banged up, and folks are blaming our hero's crew for being cursed. He insists they are not really cursed, but this funky weather is not helping shake the rumors. Seems like it's getting our hero worried, especially with the higher-ups likely to step in soon. Then, the redhead asks why our hero's lingering at the entrance. In response, Incrid explains he is honing his senses, trying to pick out subtle sounds in the heavy rain. Rem is thoroughly creeped out by Incrid's unconventional training method. I guess it's not surprising this kind of intricate exercise does not make sense to Rem, especially since he's more of a brute. Meanwhile, Jackson, chilling in the background, just encourages our boy, telling him that he is doing great and would prefer for him to keep it up. Rem's annoyance peaks when he learns that Jackson is the one teaching their commander these creepy things. He shouts at him, but Incrid remains silent, focusing solely on listening to the rain in the middle of this rowdy atmosphere. Then, the muscle-bound Jesus also chimes in, suggesting that if Incrid wants to train in the tent, there are still things he can do even while lying down. Well, Ragnar would rather not see this guy making that creepy pose again, and would prefer to avoid indulging in such exercises. The soldiers' banter continues as the rain pours down relentlessly. Meanwhile, in one of the tents where the higher-ranking soldiers are gathered, they are likely strategizing their next move. The leader suggests sending out a scouting party before winter sets in, and he asks for suggestions on who might be best for the task. Pointy-eared lady immediately nominates the 4th squad, which happens to be our hero's squad, of course. Seems like the leader does not share the same optimism. He kinda brushes off our hero, calling him a useless bug, and points out that he will not risk this scouting mission by giving this responsibility to some troublesome folks. But the lady remains resolute in her decision, mentioning that she has got high hopes and insists they will hopefully bring the best results. When the leader asks what gives her such confidence, she just shrugs and says it's a fairy's instinct, and she is sure about her decision. Once the rain clears and the sky's back to normal, our hero gets summoned by the fairy. And well, he is hit with the unexpected news that he's being sent on a scouting mission. Once Incrid is assigned for the scout mission by the fairy, he heads back to his camp. There, his friends ask him if he did something to piss off the company commander, to which he reassures that he has done nothing wrong. The redhead then asks why the fairy specifically picked the hero for this scouting job. And in his mind, Incrid reassures himself that the fairy will not kill him, especially since that troublemaker Krang has already left camp. Rem then chimes in, offering to help our boy get out of the situation if he does not want to go. He lets Rem know in response that brute strength like his will not help him escape this. Meanwhile, the jacked-up dude is still praying in the corner, asking the gods if they are testing their poor servants by taking away their precious squad leader. Suddenly, Ragnar wakes up from his bed and volunteers to go in the place of our hero, but my guy refuses immediately. The redhead, whose name slipped my mind, asks the MC if he's being sent to scout the tall grass fields. If so, he advises him to pay attention to changes in the grass noises and to notice disturbances. Those are the first signs of an ambush. At this, Rem gets absolutely furious, asking if this sneaky guy is once again trying to teach our hero his same old nonsense. Seeing Rem getting rowdy, Incrid is pretty sure no one will stop them from fighting once he's gone. He is not sure if he should leave them here, but he also believes there is nobody better suited for this scouting job than himself. He reveals that after enlisting, due to his lackluster skills, he was constantly moved around, filling in for others. The one place he ended up being useful was as the leader of a squad of leftovers. Since then, he's always been trying to calm down these rowdy individuals every time they fight. Our hero tells Rem to chill out, but Rem asks if their squad leader wants to act stupid to take Redhead's advice. The redhead then jumps in, telling Rem he should thank our boy, otherwise he would have another hole in his heart soon. Rem fires back with his own sass, warning the guy his head would be rolling on the ground before he could have swung his dagger. Meanwhile, Incrid is pondering how to handle these guys. They are all formidable, and he cannot afford to lose them because they are more powerful than him. In the end, he decides not to stress about it and heads out on the scouting mission. He is confident he will grow stronger, planning to let the scouts take the front line so he can focus on honing his senses while walking at the back. One of the scouts notices Incrid lost in thought and snaps him out of his daydream, telling him to focus ahead. He asserts his authority, reminding him that while he may be a squad leader somewhere else, but right now, he is not the leader of this scouting unit. And this scout member appears to be scout squad leader, Andrew Gardner. I guess this explains why he is getting cocky over our hero. One of the squad members mocks the knight, questioning if he even has the guts to face Andrew, given he's part of that ragtag outcast squad. Another clown ridicules him as well, asking if he even knows how to hold a sword. Andrew chimes in, stating he would rather avoid a useless bastard like him if he came at him, emphasizing that his squad survives because its members are genuinely powerful. Andrew then rallies his entire squad, declaring that if they encounter the enemy, they will bash their skulls in. The squad members respond with equal enthusiasm. Meanwhile, our hero silently chuckles to himself, seeing these fools who do not grasp the true meaning of scouting. He is certain that with such a cocky squad leader, their scouting mission is bound to flop. Suddenly, they notice his tracks there down below. The leader takes a close look at the footprints and declares them to be new tracks, enthusiastically suggesting they follow them because they are in for a barbecue tonight. But our hero gets really worried hearing this, knowing that Nuss travel in groups of at least 20. He starts doubting if Andrew is using his head at all. Then another guy scoffs as well, pointing out that the tracks are actually from gazelles. He glances at the knight and remarks how obnoxious the squad leader can be. This guy goes by the name Henry. Later, our hero explains that Henry's a hunter from a mountain town who is not too fond of squad leaders. Since they started chatting, they have gotten pretty tight with each other. Henry shared some hunting tips that the knight found pretty handy. That is also how Henry could tell those tracks were from gazelles earlier on. The squad leader had the whole team searching for Nuss that were not even there in the first place, wasting the entire scout squad's day. But this cocky bastard still will not admit there are not any Nuss around. The next day comes, and they finally reach the tall grass fields. When they look ahead, the fields seem endless, the grass towering over even their 6-foot squad members. But this loudmouth rallies his squad again, promising they will cross these fields, find the enemy scouting party, and bring them back as prisoners for a big reward. Reluctantly, our hero and Henry start following this idiot. Henry wonders aloud if they are even supposed to be going this far, since they were just supposed to scout up to here. But Knight reminds him it is the squad leader's call, and the whole platoon blindly follows his boneheaded orders without question. After walking for a while, Incrid finds himself confused because he had expected this knucklehead to give up after a few meters. Walking through this dense, tall grass is exhausting, but the leader seems determined. Henry points out that there are not many animal droppings around, prompting our hero to ask if that is unusual. Henry worries, explaining that it means there are no animals in this area even though food is plentiful for them here. Suddenly, a giant claw shakes the ground with its thudding voice, and Incrid is pretty sure they are in trouble. The black cat zooms past them with lightning speed, and our hero immediately shouts for everyone to get down. But before they can react, needles pierce their heads. The squad leader's face turns pale at the sight, and finally, the enemy comes into view. Our squad starts running, but their efforts seem futile as soldiers are grabbed one after another, their throats slit without hesitation. Despite his sweat-drenched face, our hero keeps running. From a bird's-eye view of the grass field, it is clear that my guy is trapped, surrounded by enemies closing in from every direction. Nonetheless, he keeps on running, but those guys quickly load their bows and let their arrows fly. The knight dodges the first volley, thanks to the listening technique he learned from Jackson, the redhead. But it only gets him so far, and he knows he's screwed when he hears a chorus of arrows whizzing toward him, finding their mark with devastating accuracy. Once he gets back into the past, Incrid tries reasoning with the squad leader, but this cocky bastard just sneers and asks if he wants his head chopped off. Realizing no one's listening to him, our hero starts thinking about going solo. As the setting sun casts its glow on the grassy field, enemy soldiers arrive to ambush their party. This time, our hero tries to take a different path to escape, but he still gets taken down by them with arrows. But each time he tries a new tactic, like moving north to evade the crossbowmen, but he finds himself taken down once again, this time with spears. The next day, he attempts to evade them all again, but the relentless pursuit continues, and he's pierced once more. Incrid also notices that the enemy team's uniforms are dyed green, as if they were prepared for an ambush. This makes him wonder what could be so important in this field that they are defending it so desperately. Suddenly, he sees clothes fluttering in the air, stained with blood, but then, his throat is brutally pierced by this swordsman, and before he loses consciousness, the only thought in his mind is what these people could possibly be hiding here. Once again, that annoying loudmouth yells about crossing the field and capturing the enemy scouting party for a reward. But our hero knows it is just hot air, since they have tried dozens of times without luck. As they head deeper in, there is no turning back. Meeting death seems inevitable because these Aspen jerks are hiding something there, and our hero wants to find out what. Henry asks why Incrid is standing like a statue. Meanwhile, our guy vows to himself he will overcome this sense of hopelessness once more. The scout squad leader starts as usual yelling at the knight, calling him useless for making them wait. A squad member reassures our hero that dealing with their leader is a hassle, but tells him to just go along with it for now. However, Incrid makes it clear that he is not tolerating this annoying behavior anymore, and tells this ponytail dude that he is free to lick his leader's ass, but he's not gonna do the same. The ponytail guy gets annoyed and demands to know what he is saying. Fed up with nonsense, the knight finally pushes him away and tells everyone he's done playing this stupid game. He asserts that he will not tolerate any more of this BS. Of course, the cocky leader asks the knight in response if he's trying to disobey orders, but my man calmly refuses and confidently declares that he's taking command from now on. The cocky leader is furious to hear this, but our regressor knows deep down it is the only way to set things right. He understands he cannot navigate this situation alone and needs the strength of everyone around him. Especially this ponytail guy. He's a fighter through and through, the most skilled in the squad, yet he sticks by this annoying leader's side. Our hero figures he's probably the squad leader's babysitter or something. The cocky guy agrees to let Incrid take command if he defeats him in a duel, and seeing his stance, our hero realizes the guy is well trained, but also notices his lack of experience in commanding. He suspects he's some rich lord's son, especially with that ponytail following him like a bodyguard. But then, he remembers that if Andrew were truly a noble, he wouldn't be desperate to score this scouting mission to earn some recognition. So instead, he starts to wonder if he's a fallen noble or something like that. The cocky guy mocks our hero, ridiculing Incrid for his supposed pathetic skills and odd bravery. He then goes off, claiming he has a mission to fulfill unlike our useless guy. Incrid calmly tells the man to stop yapping, while gesturing for him to come at him already. Looks like he's ready to fight barehanded against the loudmouthed idiot. The man gets furious at the jab, and immediately charges at our hero. Incrid takes his stance, confident he can handle this dude because his reckless moves are bound to trip him up. As soon as the squad leader swings his sword at his opponent, he's effortlessly stopped with bare hands, sending him stumbling back. Then, my guy delivers a solid shoulder smash right into Andrew's gut, leaving him wide-mouthed and drooling. He falls right away, while our hero stands tall over him. Onlookers are shocked to witness this scene, knowing our guy was supposed to be at the bottom of the barrel, so it does not make sense how he took down Andrew with just one move. Incrid declares that from now on, the squad is under his command and asks if anyone has objections. No one speaks up, not even the guy with the ponytail, since the knight won the fight fair and square. Andrew, swallowing his pride, has no choice but to accept it. Looks like our hero is finally making his first move towards success after getting slaughtered so many times. And as they enter the grass field, he is the one leading the way this time around. Meanwhile, those following him wonder what this guy's planning. Suddenly, Incrid stops and asks Henry about his dreams. Henry is confused and questions why he's asking such a thing out of the blue. To clarify the reason, the knight explains that for example if he wants to marry a girl who runs a flower shop, surviving today is the key. He then asks another soldier about his dreams. The soldier shares how his lover just had a baby, so Incrid tells him to make it out alive for his child's sake. He then asks two more guys the same question. One wants to save money and start a business, and the other just wants to go home to his family. Lastly, he asks Andrew about his wish as well, who replies that he wants to fulfill his mother's last wish. Andrew then clarifies that his dream and mission is to revive his family's prestige once again. Anyway, our hero states that everyone's goals here are the same: to survive this ordeal and live to the next day. He turns around confidently and tells everyone they are going to make it out of here alive. The soldiers might not fully understand what our hero is talking about, but they nod nonetheless. Meanwhile, the man in question is thinking that he needs these people to start acting proactively. There is nothing more motivating than the threat to one's life, especially with the enemy possibly nearby. He plans for everyone to break through. With all that said, Incrid suddenly commands Henry to shoot an arrow at head height. Henry hesitates at first, saying there is nothing there, but our hero responds with a chilling voice, making it clear that he will not repeat himself again. With his orders made clear, Henry shoots the arrow as instructed, and it finds its mark right in the head of an enemy squad member. Obviously, the squad members are extremely shocked to realize they were being ambushed. But before any confusion spreads, Incrid quickly directs Andrew to follow him. The man immediately complies, and the enemy soldiers find themselves surrounded. Our hero easily takes down one of them with a piercing blow over their shoulders. The opposing squad still has no clue what is happening, and their leader orders them to kill our party. But before they can react, Andrew brings down another enemy soldier. Unbeknownst to the man, however, there is a guy ready to attack him from behind. Thankfully, that enemy ends up losing his head in the process, courtesy of the ponytail guy, Andrew's bodyguard. Incrid takes down another guy, quickly calculating that the original 12 enemies are now reduced to 8. The enemy soldiers finally realize that they are the ones under ambush, and order each other to kill their adversaries. Meanwhile, our squad regroups at a spot, and Incrid wastes no time telling his friends to take out every last one of them. The massacre begins, and enemy soldiers are getting cut down left and right. Our hero realizes that in a tall grass field like this, even the enemy has a hard time pinpointing their location. But their cover was blown in previous encounters because the enemy soldiers were chasing after a beast. The same beast pops into view once again, startling the opposing team. As they try to strike down the black cat, Incrid seizes the opportunity and takes down the soldier first. He reveals that the first time around, the enemy stumbled upon them coincidentally because of the beast. This time, their focus on chasing the beast caused them to overlook the ambush that was set up. He emphasizes that he does not want the beast to die, because it played a crucial role in turning the tide in their favor. With the opponent down, everyone looks visibly drained and takes a moment to rest while reporting to Incrid that they have dealt with the soldiers. As expected, he then instructs everyone to move immediately. Meanwhile, the black cat gazes at our party, seemingly grateful to our hero for saving its life from the soldier. In any case, the crew continued moving forward, with only one casualty this time, leaving the unit with 6 people remaining. Even with multiple attempts, it was impossible to save everyone, so Incrid decided to press forward with those who survived instead of resetting back in time. After a while, they encounter the same type of soldiers again, and one unfortunate soul finds his throat slit by our hero before he even realizes what hit him from behind. Having replayed this same day multiple times, the knight now knows the quantity and locations of the enemy soldiers. He understands that continuing straight ahead would lead them into the path of 30 crossbowmen, so this time he chose to take a right turn to avoid them at all costs. Incrid was easily able to take down the spearman who had been relentlessly chasing them each day he regressed back. This time, he takes them down first, ensuring they do not hinder their plans. By avoiding direct confrontations and using hit-and-run tactics, our party slowly breaks free from the enemy's encirclement. Andrew's going all out, no holds barred in taking out the enemy. His bodyguards looking concerned though, worried that his friend is pushing himself too hard. Regardless, with the sunset approaching and the risk of getting lost in the dark, they are keen to leave these fields soon. But even then, our hero insists on pushing deeper in, confident that he knows the right path. The ponytail guy, however, is not thrilled about venturing further and asks the knight to share his plan properly. Incrid just tells him to stick close in response, promising he's got the navigation part covered. With a heavy tone, he makes it clear to the ponytail that he will not entertain any disagreements, and orders everyone to follow him without question. The ponytail, visibly angry with our hero, shocks everyone by pressing his sword against his throat. He warns the knight, that as their captain, he better start making the right decisions, emphasizing that he will not blindly follow him to his death. He asserts that if it comes down to it, he will kill him with his own hands to ensure his own survival. This is where the knight calmly reminds him that they have come too far to turn back now, and retreating is no longer an option, pointing out that the path behind them will likely be swarmed by the enemy after the commotion they have caused. But despite the solid reasoning, the defiant ponytail insists that he still sees no reason to follow our hero's lead. Incrid then pushes the sword aside with his hand, making it clear that he's determined to survive this place, which is the sole reason he's bothering to lead the squad in the first place. Meanwhile, Andrew stands behind the ponytail guy, feeling amazed. He used to think of our guy as useless trash, someone who was actually good for nothing. He would even compare him to his father, who had given up and wasted their family's wealth. But now, seeing our hero's determination and resolve, Andrew is reminded of his mother's words on her deathbed. She had told him that their house might be in ruins, but she still had hoped that he could lead everyone with his trust and rebuild their family. And when Andrew thinks about it, this formerly useless person appears to have become the kind of person he always wanted to be. With that determination in our hero's eyes, he gives everyone faith that they will definitely make it out of this place alive. Andrew steps up and puts his faith in Incrid's words, finally recognizing him as the captain. Of course, the ponytail guy raises his concerns, asking his friend why he's doing this. But the man makes it clear that they now have a new captain, and they gotta follow his orders without any fuss. Needless to say, the complainer goes silent after seeing Andrew's determination, and reluctantly puts his faith in our hero as well. Our guy then squats down and tells everyone to follow suit until he gives the signal, and upon his order, the squad immediately gets down quietly, ready to move as instructed. Their first step to break out of this mess is to ambush the enemy and break the encirclement. As they crawl silently through the dark and dense grass, they finally spot dozens of spears pointing up from the grape field, where the enemy officers are resting. Our party members are terrified to see this sight and they just silently sit there without moving an inch. Incrid reveals that this is the only time and place they can pass the enemy without confronting them. From a bird's eye view, we can clearly see the soldiers scattered everywhere, making it obvious why he wants to avoid confrontation, because the enemy numbers are in the hundreds. The party feels anxious but trudges along silently, following our hero's lead. He feels confident that everything has gone according to plan, and now only the final step remains. As the sun sets and darkness falls, the reason for their previous failures to escape the field is about to become clear. Once they get out of the fields, everyone is shocked by the sight before them, because they have stumbled upon the enemy camp. Luckily, it seems deserted, with everyone out patrolling the fields. The reason our hero failed every time before was because the Aspen soldiers were killing everyone in the field to silence them. Apparently, they were hiding something in these fields that nobody could know about. As they move forward, we see those same tattered clothes fluttering in the air we saw before, along with bones scattered across the ground. The knight tells everyone to keep moving because this is their only chance to escape. The way out will definitely appear before them, since their enemy is busy guarding something that's more important than their party's capture. We continue the story with our hero's team standing at the side of a corner tent and observing the situation around the enemy's base. Looks like one of the soldiers does not agree with Incrid's plan of setting their camp on fire. Mr. Ponytail over here questions his thought process and asks him if he has lost his mind as he wants to burn it down while they are in the middle of their camp, because they will end up getting surrounded by the enemies. Our MC ignores his opinion entirely and asks him about his name. The Ponytail, in a very dominating tone, tells him to call him Mac, which is honestly a very cute name for such a sturdy-looking man. Right away, the knight warns Mac that he will not tolerate any disobedience from any of his members. This makes Mac abuse him, and the moment he is about to lash at him, the former squad leader interferes, ordering the Ponytail to stay quiet, as Andrew already has a notion that our hero is good at leading the squad. He learnt that lesson the hard way. At this moment, Incrid starts running forward while everyone follows him behind. Although Mac is reluctant, he has no choice but to follow, because the only one who can get these guys out of this situation alive is our hero. Suddenly, our boy rips through one of the tents through his blade, which makes the Ponytail guy wonder what the hell he is doing. Although the next second, he gets surprised that the tent is empty. Now they are out of the tent in the open, and Mac is still wondering how the hell their captain is so confident and fearless while recklessly going through the enemy camps. Even more bizarre is the fact that they have not seen a single soldier around even though they are in their enemy's encampment, which should have been bustling with the presence of the soldiers. All of a sudden, the protagonist applies the brakes, and with the gesture of the hand, informs them to wait as he has noticed some movement of the soldiers near the flag in the center of the encampment. Incrid is looking at the soldiers, and thinking in his head that he has infiltrated this base dozens of times already. But when he first touched this flag, all the soldiers in the base attacked him straight away, forgetting about everything. After this thinking it through, he tells his squad that the actual motive of the Aspen soldiers in that field was to hide this flag, and protecting it is their main objective as it definitely carries a deep meaning to them. That alone is the reason for this tight security. He asks his members that if they set this flag on fire while considering this theory, how they are the enemies going to respond. Instead of responding, Mac is awestruck about how the hell he knows about this flag and its location so clearly. I wonder if he's ever gonna find out that our boy over here is an absolute loser of the century, who has been here countless times already. Suddenly, something clicks in Mac's mind, and he wonders if the company commander has given him that information because she's the one who appointed this noob to this squad. That would mean the reason of him taking over the squad and infiltrating the encampment is all part of the secret mission he is on. Meanwhile, Incrid is telling them that the soldiers will be too busy protecting the flag, and at that moment of disruption when they will be focused on the fire, they will finally have their chance to escape. He orders the squad to split up into two groups, where one of the groups will act as bait, trying to divert their attention towards them, and the other group will start the fire in this camp, a perfect strategy for redemption. The Ponytail fellow straight up chooses to become a part of the bait group, which takes the squad by surprise as no one was expecting him to be cooperative. After choosing his group, he turns around. Meanwhile, our boy is wondering if he is the same guy who has been complaining constantly about everything, and now all of a sudden he has decided to be cooperative. He has no issue with it, of course, because it is going to make things smoother for him going forward. Incrid is thinking that he has dragged this squad so many times in this Aspen encampment, but he never had so many soldiers with him until now, which is definitely going to make things work. He is really confident about the events happening, as he terms today's day as his best day ever, and he has a good feeling about it, making him believe that he can finally pull it off. After that, one of the soldiers in the bait group throws a stone, which hits one of Aspen's soldiers. This diverts their attention towards our party, and they start alerting everyone that there are intruders in the encampment. All of the Aspen soldiers rush to chase after the intruders, abusing them for this maneuver. On the other hand, Encrid is seriously bent on making this day work, as he truly believes he will succeed. He dashes towards one of the ground torches so he can use it to fire up this encampment. Right when he finally gets his hand on the torch, he decides that it is time to move on to tomorrow. However, things never come easy for our boy, because as soon as he grabs the torch, a huge warrior is all over him, ready to attack him with his sword. The huge Aspen Knight thrashes his sword with full might on our hero, who by the smallest of margins is safe from this attack as the sword cuts through the torch. This attack stuns our boy, who is losing his mind over the fact that he has not heard him coming, which is a shame after taking all that time to get a hand over this hearing technique. Both the knights are now facing each other, with deadly expressions on their faces, while Encrid is yet to take out his sword. He is thinking about this combatant that he has not seen him in any of his time loops, and this combatant does not look like any ordinary solider either. Our boy is literally running cold while imagining how this day is going to end in a tragic way too, as he is wondering from where such strong warrior came so suddenly. The warrior on the other hand is quite serious himself, ready to devour Encrid as he yells at him and calls him a rat. The squad leader is now busy thinking about one of the groups that are late in carrying out their mission, when suddenly, the enemy's knight notices something. One of the tents right behind him is on fire, and the soldiers are yelling to put it out quickly. One of them points out that there are more intruders too, and orders the soldiers to get them, while Andrew and his companion, who are in the fire group, are running with small barrels in their hands. However, the knight orders them to put out the fire first because it is more important than catching those intruders at the moment. While our boy is thinking about the effort the Mac has put in order to grab the maximum attention of their soldiers, and others have been distracted by him. At the same time, Andrew set the tents on fire, and now all he had to do is escape this place to end the day. But first, he decides to have a one-on-one battle with this combatant, getting in the posture to start his attack from the foot, pointing the tip of the sword in his direction. He then kicks against the ground to propel his body forward, and shoots at him as he can see the clear gap in his defense because he is looking at the tents that are on fire. Unfortunately, it clearly looks like our guy has underestimated him, because the warrior turns around in a flash, dodging his sword and surviving a well-placed stab. Our boy is completely stunned. Suddenly, a gush of blood can be seen coming out of his waist, as he has been slashed during this attack in those fractions of a second. My guy is in pain, trying to stop the flow of blood by putting his hand over the wound, while he is thinking that it was the most perfect stab that he could have done. But the combatant literally calls it a weak attack, showing the might of this big guy. From this attack, our hero realizes that he will not be able to defeat this monster, at least not at his current level. This gives him flashbacks of all the hurdles he had faced to reach here, like an ambush through the fields, and countless deaths he faced to get here. A few minutes ago, he truly believed that he had overcome all the challenges of this current timeline. But this is not the case, because the real wall of this time loop variation is this combatant. The bleeding has now stopped, and he is thinking if he challenges him on his face then he is going to die unceremoniously, and all the effort he has put in his day is going to fruitless, because he will have to take control of the squad again, have to go through these fields, and repeat countless days in the process. This thought of all those meaningless deaths makes him laugh, which confuses the warrior, while our boy is steadfast in his will to beat this guy. The combatant is now enraged at his maniac laughing, and he believes that he is mocking him, so he pounces on him, and tells our MC that he is going to cut him up and feed him to his dogs. Meanwhile, our boy is ready to take him on, as he strikes a really different pose from his earlier ones, and tells himself that he is going to beat this guy, and overcome this wall. The scene resumes with our boy ready to take on this combatant in a one-on-one battle. Both of them are exchanging blows one after another, as they are striking their swords against each other, clanging their swords, and sparks of these metal hitting each other are looking absolutely majestic. However, the enemy's knight is still dominant as he parries our boy's attack, and then comes at him with the vertical attack. Of course, our hero manages to dodge it well, getting out of its way while the sword bangs on the ground. And to be honest, this guy is not stopping and keeps counter-attacking from every position. He even manages to swing the sword up, which surprises our hero, who is hardly managing to dodge these attacks on his end. The movement of this warrior is so fast and precise, as he is at least a commander-level warrior. And after seeing this display of skills, our boy thinks that there is a huge difference in skill between them, as it is impossible for him to counterattack under this situation. After that he swings another time, and sends our boy flying with the impact. But our sneaky knight uses his brain and throws a dagger at this beast. He manages to protect himself using one of his hands to diverge. But surprisingly, his hand is not damaged at all too. Our boy is quite impressed by the fact that he blocked his dagger using the back of his hand, while this long-range sneaky attack infuriates the combatant, and he pushes forward to stab Encrid, who, once again, dodges it by a very minimum margin, while the soldiers are yelling that the fire is spreading everywhere. This yelling makes the combatant miss Encrid's head, as the sword just misses by a few centimeters, giving our boy a chance to live this today a little more. Suddenly, the enemy's knight looks behind, as someone yells that oil has been poured everywhere. That means this fire is going to burn everything around, including the flag at the center of the encampment. someone calls for platoon commander, and no surprise, as the guy who is fighting our hero is the platoon commander himself, and his battle skills are the living proof of it. The man in hoodie yells at the commander if he does not know what is at stake here, as he is more consumed in fighting this intruder rather than prioritizing the important matter. The commander looks at Incrid and deduces that this guy is not going down with the fight, while our boy is fully prepared to face the next attack. They are staring in each other's eyes, as lions ready to show their dominance, but the commander turns around, skipping the battle for now, but he has definitely made up his mind to see our guy again to have a decisive battle. As he is heading back to his soldier, our boy is thinking that this guy is backing off from this point that easily, wondering if he is not the true wall that he had to face to move on to the next day. However, he looks quite resilient about moving ahead, and thinks that even if this guy is not the true wall that he needs to overcome today, he still needs to improve himself to face this guy in the future, because there is a huge gap between their skills. Suddenly, Andrew comes running from behind, shouting squad leader in panic, which diverts Incrid's attention towards him, and he looks back. He tells the squad leader that they need to escape from here as soon as possible, but our boy is still in awe over the skills of this commander, and keeps looking at him as he heads towards the tents on fire. Right then, the commander stares back at him with a side eye, and they have a serious eye contact once again. Seeing that, our hero orders that they retreat right away, as this is the best chance to escape from here because all of them are too occupied in taking out the fire using water buckets, trying their best to prevent it from reaching the flag. All members of the raiding party rush back into the forests. Unfortunately, they have lost one of their members who went that way, and now only 5 of them are remaining in the squad. Andrew asks the knight if they are now safe, or will their enemies send a large-scale party to chase after them, but our boy isn't sure enough to give him any confidence. That's when he notices that Henry is coughing, as it seems like he has gotten injured because he has covered his right hand with the left one, and is running very slowly. All of a sudden, the Aspen soldiers are right at their tail, with Henry in the end, and they are yelling to capture them, and make sure that they don't get away. The top 3 of these remaining 5-member squads turn around and attack at these soldiers before they could start chasing them, which gives Henry a chance to escape at his current speed. The captain, Mac, and former squad leader slay these Aspen soldiers right away, and then continue running once again. While Incrid is asking them to not hesitate and keep running, Henry is not looking in a good state. Henry suggests that they will not be able to chase after them if they keep running towards the habitat of the field fox and snake, which is countered by the last member that this means it will be harder for them to reach there too. However, Henry gets a grin on his face on hearing that because he knows of a safe way that leads there, which is a hunter's path, and we can also call it the path where Henry shines. On hearing that, the squad leader assures Henry that he fully trusts him, so guides them, because at the moment they have no better option than entrusting a hunter with their lives. It seems like our soldiers are out of danger because Incrid is not able to hear the footsteps of the Aspen soldiers chasing them, as they are rushing at full speed through these fields. This is the habit of field foxes, and Henry's suggestion has saved their lives. Our boy gives the credits to Andrew and Mac for the efforts they made to get rid of those pursuers, while he also praises Henry's pathfinding skills that actually helped them run away from them so quickly. All in all, it was a good team effort that saved their day, and took them this far in their mission. Suddenly, Incrid covers his eyes with his hands. As he looks at the sky, the sun is rising from behind the mountains, marking the beginning of the next day, while they are rushing through the field to get to their bases. Finally, they have reached their company's base, where other soldiers are surprised to look at their condition, asking them what happened to all of them. While they all are so tired, the hunter believes he is going to pass out after this effort. Meanwhile, there are sounds of the soldiers falling on the ground to take some rest. Our boy is stretching his body, closing his eyes, thinking that another today has passed in his life, and he is relieved to think about the new day that is going to shine on him. On the other hand, Henry has actually passed away, while others are at their limits too. In the encampment of the enemy, everything is burned, including the sacred center where the flag was hosted. A guy with golden hair and beard, with scars on his face, mentions their flag to the hoodie guy, who tells him that they will need to prepare the flag again. He is the Grey Dogs company commander, who is surprised that the famous Grey Dogs couldn't handle a small raiding party, which is a shame for the company. The company commander is unable to comprehend the fact that the soldiers stationed at the tall grass fields were the best of Grey Dogs, but a few finite soldiers break through to their camp and escape after setting up the fire. Time for a little introduction of the Grey Dogs. This is an independent company with independent operational control. The name of the company is derived from the Grey Dog that resides within the Principality of Aspen. This Grey Dog is a vicious creature, with a persistent temperament which it can connect with whatever target it has set its eyes upon. After that, it doesn't matter whether it is in love or it is war. Therefore, this company is called Grey Dog, which is also called Persistent Lovers. After this, we jump back into the present time where company commander asks the platoon commander, who goes by the name of Mitch Hurrier, about the person he faced, and asks if he was strong, on which the platoon commander informs him that the enemy soldier was saved due to the fire. Otherwise, he would have ended that rat right there. Hearing that, the blondie shows signs of grief that he just got lucky then, which is also a skill in its domain. but Mitch assures him that it will not happen again, with a dead serious face. Meanwhile, at the camp, our boy is sitting by himself, immersed in his thoughts. He is really disturbed by the fact that he was not able to overcome the wall, although he faced him head on, and he wanted to keep fighting him. Both of these knights have locked their eyes on each other, and their persistent temperament is going to take them forward from here, as both of them want to defeat each other without hesitation, so these persistent lovers have set their next target. Next up, we see Rem, who is lying in his bed, playing with his axe as it seems like he doesn't have much else to do. He is really bored at the moment, while thinking that the squad leader should be returning from the recon at any time, but there is no news about it at the moment. Suddenly, he grabs the axe and gets up, with a dead face, staring at the wall. A thought of Incrid's death strikes him, which makes him suddenly get upright and think about it. He is thinking that our boy definitely got better recently, but he is still a small fry in comparison to other knights, so it would not be surprising if he dies. While he is thinking that he started to like him, which is not something that happens often, and then he takes a cold sigh and tells himself what he can do about it even if he died, so he says that there is nothing interesting anymore. Meanwhile, Ragna wakes up from his sleep, yawning loudly, but he stops suddenly and notices Rem, who is staring right at him, which makes the side puff guy ask him what he is looking at. The bored soldier does not reply to him, and shows him the middle finger the very next second. Meanwhile, Ragna, who has just awakened from his sleep, is looking at him like a clueless sheep. He clearly looks like Rem wants to have some fun by pissing off his comrade. Suddenly, Rem's expression changes, and he now has an evil smile, as he tells Sleepyhead that he thinks he wants to kill him now, which makes Ragna a little worried as he calls him crazy, and pulls out his sword from the cover. On the other hand, Incrid is present in front of the Lady Commander, and is briefing her about the stuff they did there. The lady is having a hard time trying to digest the fact that he figured out that there was an ambush by chance, infiltrated the enemy's base, and also just happened to burn the whole place down, while our hero calmly tells her that he just continued to make the best possible choices in that situation and just got lucky with that. The elf ears stare in his eyes while repeating the word lucky as she finds it a little suspicious. After that, she asks him to go and give his body a little rest, so his body can recover quickly, and our boy bows down to her to take his leave. Meanwhile, she is thinking that she had a little hope that this guy would achieve something, but she didn't expect anything this big that he just pulled off, and she is wondering who this guy is. As he comes out of her camp, he is wondering what is going on in her mind, as he is unable to comprehend her thoughts, and there is already another person there to talk to him as he calls his name. This guy is Andrew, who is apologizing to the squad leader for acting out in the beginning, but he owes him for saving his life and gives him the credits for that, while Ponytail and Navigator are also present in the background. After that, he asks Incrid if he will ever meet him again, on which our boy tells him if their paths crossed again then definitely, as he waves at them and starts walking away from them. Seeing him walk away, Andrew and company literally bow down in respect to their squad leader, who is walking away proudly, having won the recognition of both the higher-ups and his comrades. Meanwhile, he is thinking that Andrew is alive because of him, as he did manage to bring back those four, but he is really unsure if it was really his best. Deep down, he is having second thoughts about losing two of his squad members, and if he was a little stronger, he could have saved them too. Unfortunately, it is not the story anymore. With these redemptions, he is finally capable of passing his limits, and eventually he will be done with his desperate struggle and strive towards his true goal of becoming a knight. He is determined to use this day as a stepping stone for that purpose, and to prevent repeating the same fate over and over. Clearly, he is really determined to become stronger than ever, and we can see the burning desire of becoming a mighty knight in his eyes. All of a sudden, there is a huge ruckus going by, where everyone is chanting that those bastards are fighting again and are enjoying the duel. This is an ongoing duel between Rem and Ranga, who are fighting like complete maniacs, using their weapons, and exchanging those blows with one hell of expressions, not seen before. Our boy is also thinking about the same thing regarding their expressions, as they have sparred with him multiple times, but at none of those occasions they had such expressions. The watchers are awestruck by such a display of strengths, and are passing the remarks that they are not human, and they are behaving like animals. Meanwhile, our boy is still struck by the thought that they never lashed out at him this way, so he needs to set the priorities straight, and this starts with forcing them to make such faces while fighting him too. These guys are not stopping at all, exchanging one blow after the other. Suddenly Ragna stops as he catches the sight of the squad leader approaching them. All of a sudden, they forget about their duel and start mocking him, as Rem said that he should inform him if he has returned from his journey instead of hiding like a cat again. After that, the Axeman starts yelling at the critics to come and fight him instead of looking at him like this. But of course, all of them run away when they hear the provocation. That's when the blondie notices that the squad leader is hurt, but Incrid insists that it's nothing more than a scratch. He obviously does not care about the injury, but is rather focused on their fighting, as he asks Rem straight away about the moment he stopped Ragna's attack. Rem, of course, is not interested in his basic antics, and asks him to wash himself and rest. After being ignored by Axeman, my guy decides to ask Ragna about his attack, who seems just as reluctant to talk about it. He thinks this is not the right time and place for such questions, and starts walking away after vocalizing his thoughts. My guy is completely clueless and asks him why it is not the right moment. But he gets ignored again as it seems Ragna does not want to entertain him at the moment. Incrid thinks that it sounds like he has to say something, but he ignores it too for the time being, considering if Ragna had to say it, he would have done so. The battalion commander, after knowing about the enemy force's ambush, moved the entire battalion closer to the tall grass field. On the other hand, the squad leader is still thinking about the wound that he got during the battle, although it has been significantly healed throughout his trip, and he is constantly reflecting on his fights and training accordingly. After that, he gets up, wearing his shirt, heading somewhere. As soon as the ginger notices him, he asks Incrid if he is going to train again, and tells him that they are moving out again tomorrow, so why don't he rest a little. However, our boy informs him that he will be gone for just a bit. Rem takes pity on him while eating his meal, saying that he has not even healed properly, and is already training, which can result in his death if he keeps on doing it, while Ragna does not give any input as he is busy eating his meal. The next morning, the swordsman's eyes open up due to sounds of someone training outside, which forces him to get up. As he looks around, he notices that it is squad leader who is doing his training again. He stretches his body, picks up his sword, and heads out, thinking that he is good with sword, and becoming stronger was not too difficult for him. He had a chance to become a knight, but he found it quite boring, and considered spending time and energy on it being a complete waste. He is thinking that he couldn't find any meaning in it, and as a result, lost his purpose, ultimately bringing his life to a total standstill. He is secretly watching our hero swinging, stabbing, and practicing various moves. That's when all of a sudden, his body breaks down as he sits grabbing his wound in pain. Ragna's observations are that our boy learned the fundamentals all wrong, and one needs to learn these fundamentals right at the beginning. Subsequently, he is using shortcuts to make up for those shitty fundamentals, which are clearly limiting his growth despite his hard training. He is honestly not able to understand why our boy is not giving up and keeps putting his body through pain and hardship, but Incrid gets up once again holding the sword to start his training all over. Right then, Ragna interferes and asks him why he does all of this, and the squad leader tells him straight away that he wants to become stronger. This leads to the next question about why he wants to become stronger, to which our boy replies that he wants to become a knight. Still, Ragna points out that the knight is just someone who fights well, and asks if such a title is really worth all the effort. Now our MC is all serious, talking about his dream, as he tells the blondie that the knight who he aspires to be is someone who decides for himself what is right before raising his sword. He is going to raise his sword for the honor, for the sick and poor, and for those he loves and wants to protect. This really impresses Ragna, who repeats the word honor and merit in his mind, as if he remembered something from a long-lost memory. He then keeps thinking that your strength is just a tool, but still can't help questioning himself what a knight really is. Or rather, he wants to know why he ever held a sword in his hands. That's when he starts walking forward, believing that he won't be able to find these answers until he walks the path himself. So, he calls on the squad leader and asks him if he wants to truly learn the sword. The chapter ends at this high note, where Ragna expresses his desire to help our boy in honing his sword skills and making him stronger than ever before. Incrid, on the other hand, looks like he has locked his eyes on his prey, the platoon commander of Grey Dogs. Our story continues from the base camp, where Ragna offers his squad leader, Incrid, a chance to learn swordsmanship. This is a golden opportunity for him, who is admittedly not very skilled with the sword. Before the practice even starts, Side Puff, who initially made the offer, begins to regret it, feeling lazy and second-guessing his decision. But the determined look on Incrid's face draws him in, and he believes the session might actually turn out to be interesting. Ragna starts by teasing our boy, saying that the barbarian probably taught him how to carve up the intestines of a beast or something equally crude. My guy corrects him, explaining it's called the heart of the beast, to which Ragna responds, exactly, that, and the stabbing technique too. Ragna then tells Incrid that he must forget everything he knows about sword techniques, except for those two. This shocks the hero, who questions whether he even needs to forget the veil and mercenary sword technique. Ragna insists that especially that technique must go. He explains that if Incrid clings to it, no matter how much he learns, he'll always revert to his old habits, which will eventually cause him to give up. Ragna gives him two options, either forget everything and start fresh, or remain complacent. But before he can finish, our knight eagerly interrupts, choosing to start fresh without hesitation. The man is astonished, staring at our boy as though he's seen a ghost, unable to believe that he is willing to give up everything he's learned so far. Incrid, however, isn't interested in wasting time. He immediately asks what he needs to do first, startling Ragna, who begins to think that perhaps his leader isn't normal after all. Ragna observes that the knight has a strong physique and advises him not to use a lightweight weapon. A long sword would suit him better. He offers his own sword to him, but Incrid hesitates, asking Side Puff if it's really okay to just hand over his sword like that, given how important a weapon is to a knight. Ragna hands over the sword without a second thought, saying it doesn't matter because the sword isn't anything special. He then instructs him to place his right hand over his left on the hilt. Our hero, paying close attention to every detail, asks why he should grip the sword so tightly. His instinct was not to lose his weapon. The man is clearly displeased with the answer and asks who taught him that. Unsurprisingly, it was Rem. This irritates him even more, and he mutters curses at the useless monkey for teaching such nonsense. He then instructs Incrid to get into position and strikes a powerful vertical swing. My guy blocks the attack with his sword but immediately feels a sharp pain shoot through his hands. Frustrated, he snaps at Ragna for attacking so hard. The man, unfazed, replies that it should hurt. He warns the knight that if he tenses up, he's bound to break, comparing him to a branch or a column. My guy is confused by this weird metaphor and silently regrets recruiting squad members who are terrible with words. Still, he reflects on the advice, concluding that if he grips the sword too tightly, he'll lose flexibility and risk breaking it. He realizes that he must be more adaptable in his movements. As they continue to spar, Ragna repeatedly critiques Incrid's balance and stance, urging him to keep his feet in the proper position. He also scolds him, warning that his wrists will snap if he keeps his hands so stiff. With a mocking tone, Ragna even teases him, saying he's dancing like a monkey. The sun reaches its peak, and our hero, exhausted, collapses onto the ground. Ragna stands over him, surprised at how little his squad leader knows about swordsmanship, noting that our guy doesn't even have the basics down. Incrid lies there, drenched in sweat, struggling to catch his breath, while the man begins to doubt whether swordsmanship can be taught to him easily. Just as he starts to think about Incrid's limits, he picks up his sword, pulls himself up, and asks the soldier to start again. Ragna sighs, suggesting they take baby steps first. Before they can restart, someone approaches from behind, interrupting them. It's Rem, sarcastically asking if they're having a picnic by skipping meals and training all morning. He then turns to Incrid and, pointing at Ragna, offers to take care of the worthless bastard if he's giving him too much trouble. Ragna snaps back, threatening to cut off Rem's hands. Our hero, noticing Rem is dressed up, asks if something is happening. Rem informs him that the commander has summoned them. Enemy forces are gathering nearby and are ready to launch an all-out attack. The knights and warriors of the company begin to gather on the battlefield, preparing to face Aspen's soldiers. As they prepare for battle, Ragna worries that teaching him swordsmanship at such a critical time might have been a mistake. He realizes that the soldier is still new to the technique, and there's a high chance he won't fight well, which could cost him his life. Determined to protect him, Ragna decides to stay close, convinced that Incrid will need babysitting in this battle. Amid the tense preparations, our hero mutters that he wanted more time to practice the technique. His thoughts are interrupted when he notices the enemy soldiers forming up. They've raised their banners and stand scattered across the battlefield in small groups of a few hundred. Suddenly, a cloaked figure raises his hand and declares that this is the end. Within moments, a dense fog engulfs the company's soldiers. The lady commander, shocked, realizes the enemy is using magic, and her surprise is echoed by her troops. The fog is so thick that he can't see any of his comrades, not even the ones standing beside him. Chaos and panic spread through the ranks as soldiers lose their bearings, unsure of where the enemy is. Amid the confusion, our knight hears a strange sound approaching. Others hear it too, nervously asking each other about the noise. Someone points out something in the sky, and Incrid, spotting it, shouts a warning: arrows are coming. But his warning comes too late. Hundreds of arrows rain down on the soldiers, spreading terror throughout the company. The elf-ear dodges the arrows, quickly realizing that this fog isn't normal at all. She hadn't anticipated the enemy using such a tactic, but as the saying goes, everything is fair in war. The lady commander orders her troops to take cover and raise their shields against the barrage of arrows, all the while thinking they've been caught off guard. It's clear this is a well-planned tactic from the Grey Dogs, determined to take their revenge. The enemy mage, laughing wickedly, enjoys the chaos unfolding before him. It took him extreme effort to prepare this spell, including sacrificing countless animals and gathering the purest water from lakes to sustain the rain spells. Once the spell is active, the fog blinds everyone on the battlefield except those directly beneath the casting point, the enemy's flag. He's confident that this will turn the battle into a one-sided massacre. He calls this strategy the Fog of Annihilation, certain it will obliterate the other side, as they are completely blinded by the fog. Nearby, the platoon commander of the Grey Dogs, Mitch Hurrier, remarks that the mage looks pleased with the results. The mage responds that it was a close call, especially since their flag nearly burned down in a recent raid. If it hadn't been for that fire, this would have been far easier, practically a cakewalk. Mitch recalls that raid with anger, cursing the protagonist for the daring maneuver that nearly ruined their plans. The next scene opens up with another wave of arrows raining down on Incrid's team. Soldiers shout warnings as arrows come from the front again. Our guy narrowly dodges one that whizzes past his head, missing him by inches. A little to the left, and he might have met his end. Suddenly, a shadow looms behind him, and a familiar voice, Ragna's, tells him to keep his head down. The knight recognizes him by his voice. Nearby, another voice curses the spell and its caster, calling him a fucking bastard for pulling such a cheap move. It's Rem, confirming that both of his subordinates are by his side. This gives our dude a small boost of morale, but he's still concerned. They're only a meter away, yet he can't make them out through the thick fog. How can he fight like this? His panic intensifies when an arrow lands between his legs, another close call that rattles his nerves. His breath quickens, his movements become stiff, and his legs begin to give out. He fears he won't be able to apply anything he learned from Ragna today, though he knows he wasn't going to master it on the first try anyway. Enrollment remembers Ragna's words, that he would likely revert to old habits even if he learned something new. Ragna had warned him not to fight until he fully mastered the techniques, but now our hero has no choice. It's time to either fight or die. Suddenly, something clicks in his mind. He closes his eyes and accepts the reality that death might be the only way to learn as much as he can from Ragna. He'll use death as a means to improve, responding to continue his training and fight again. Both sides are now fully engaged in battle, the clash of swords and weapons ringing out across the battlefield. Enrollment, however, isn't fighting to survive. He's waiting for someone to kill him so he can start all over again. Sizing up the situation, Ragna advises our boy to stay behind him, knowing it's impossible for him to survive this fight. But of course, this blockhead has some other plans. He tells Ragna that he's found a way, and if he can't do it in one try, he'll just try again. Without hesitation, he dashes forward into the fog, completely unaware of the enemy's position. It doesn't matter to him anymore, his goal is clear. Ragna and Rem shout after him, baffled by his reckless charge, questioning if he's lost his mind. Just then, an Aspen soldier with a spear emerges from the fog and thrusts the weapon directly into Enrollment's throat. Blood splatters in all directions. Though in immense pain, my guy feels a strange sense of satisfaction. He knows he'll get another chance to learn from Ragna and return to the battlefield. A smile creeps onto his face. The enemy soldier, shocked by the sight of the knight smiling as he bleeds, calls him a crazy bastard before yanking the spear from his neck and kicking him to the ground. The day begins again, back at base camp, with another sword technique lecture. Ragna is scolding our hero again for falling to the ground, asking if he's even understanding anything. Enrollment, however, has come to the realization that Ragna may not be a great teacher. Though clearly a genius, Ragna struggles to put what's wrong into words because these techniques come naturally to him. Meanwhile, Side Puff is sarcastically musing whether this is what people mean by understanding it but not being able to put it into practice, mocking the squad leader for being unable to execute even a simple downward swing. Enrollment sighs, concluding that Side Puff isn't actually making fun of him, he's genuinely confused. To clear things up, he directly asks about the proper center of gravity. Ragna pauses, momentarily caught off guard by the question, and, though still unable to explain it, strikes a pose with weight on his right leg to demonstrate. This solidifies our hero's belief that geniuses like Ragna don't always know how they do what they do, they just do it. Despite Ragna's weak explanations, Enrollment's strength lies in observation and listening. He resolves to memorize the stance, no matter how many times it takes to perfect it. Once again, we return to the battlefield, where arrows rain down on the company. This time, however, my dude manages to block one with his sword, though he notices that his grip is still too rigid, causing a twinge of discomfort in his hands. He isn't too bothered by it, thinking that, even if he dies again, he'll get another chance to improve. Suddenly, an arrow hits him square in the chest, and he dies. Back to base camp, another day of sword practice. This time, things are going far better for the regressed knight. It's the 31st day, and our boy is now moving more fluidly. Even Ragna notices the improvement and praises him, asking where he picked up those moves. He tells the knight that he's ready to start learning the basics. Ragna proceeds to demonstrate the 3 basic sword attacks: cutting, stabbing, and slashing. He explains that the edge of the blade is used for defense and, if the sword is of good quality, the sides can be used as well. He then swings his sword and points it at my guy, explaining that the shortest distance between an opponent and oneself is called the line of attack. Swordsmanship, he advises, is all about blocking your opponent's line of attack while extending your own. He encourages the knight to visualize his opponent and reach out with his sword. Back on the battlefield, the spear soldier makes another attempt to impale our hero. But this time, things go differently. He dodges, feeling light on his feet for the first time, and rushes forward. However, he is quickly taken down by 3 other spears, ending his day again. Despite the death, the knight is thrilled. His progress, though slow, is undeniable. Every small improvement gives him a glimmer of hope. In the next training session, our dude parries one of Ragna's attacks, surprising his teacher by tracking the movement of his sword. Little by little, the knight is improving with every death. As another day passes, the knight has now perfected his diagonal slash. Side Puff remarks that it's flawless and doesn't need any more work. All of those small improvements are starting to add up, and his grin grows wider with each death. In this battle, the knight successfully dodges Ragna's vertical swing and counters with a solid attack, causing him to lose his balance. He barely manages to block the strike, stunned by the progress. It's the 100th today, and Ragna is baffled by the movements of his squad leader. He asks seriously, "Who are you?" The look in the knight's eyes now resembles that of a beast ready to devour even Ragna. Someone needs to remind this man that he's been teaching this sword technique for the last 100 days. From that point on, the warrior no longer sees his squad leader as someone needing babysitting. The knight, who once believed his limited talent would cap his progress, realizes how wrong he was. He can clearly see the difference in his skill set. Though he could easily finish off the spear soldiers now, he recklessly chooses to die repeatedly just to push past his limits. Encrid is convinced that his ultimate goal, the road to becoming a knight, lies just beyond this pain. He laughs maniacally, finding a twisted pleasure in the process. The thrill is so intense that he wonders if he's losing his sanity. No wonder he looks like a crazy person, treating death as if he's in a game of Counter-Strike. Back at the practice grounds, our hero is prepared to die as many times as needed to grow stronger and achieve his goal of becoming a mighty knight. The next chapter begins with Ragna once again challenging him to a showdown in the world of swords. My guy, now consumed with hunger for power, is visibly different. His subordinate, who has mastered sword techniques himself, is shocked by the knight's display of skill. He accuses him of holding back on purpose until now, saying, "There's no way in this fucking world that you could be this good." The knight, however, denies it, explaining that it's not like that. Ragna, realizing this dude no longer needs more practice, concludes that all he needs now is real battlefield experience to sharpen his skills further. And so, they return to the battlefield against the Aspen soldiers. It's the 200th time this today has repeated itself. By now, our boy's stance, vision, and body language have evolved. He moves in perfect synchronization with his sword, advancing with precision. Curious to see how far his newly learned techniques can take him, he ducks under a spear thrust from the first soldier and, with lightning speed, decapitates him. Blood erupts like a volcano from the enemy's neck. After 200 attempts, the knight has memorized where the enemies will appear from beyond the fog. He would be a terrible protagonist if he didn't after 200 tries. In a flash, he grabs one soldier's spear while dodging another, confident he can now take down a few soldiers even without seeing them. The Aspen soldiers are losing their minds, unable to comprehend what's happening in the dense fog. They've been utterly reversed. One soldier, frantically looking in every direction, wonders who grabbed his spear, only to be slashed across the chest by the knight's diagonal strike. His scream of pain alerts the others. Another soldier rushes to the source of the scream, asking what's going on. Suddenly, someone warns him to watch the ground, and he aims his crossbow downward in a panic. Our guy is following Ragna's earlier advice: eyes, feet, and hands. He uses his eyes to predict the enemy's movements, his feet to position himself, and his hands to finish the job. Just as predicted, he stabs the crossbowman. Laughing heartily, the knight basks in the thrill of his newfound skills. The difference is staggering, like night and day compared to when he knew nothing of swordsmanship. Now, he feels like a prodigy. Fueled by overconfidence, the knight charges into the enemy lines, hungry for more blood and battle experience. However, he strays too far, plunging into the heart of the enemy camp. Suddenly, he's surrounded by crossbow-wielding soldiers, all aiming directly at him. One of the soldiers acknowledges his effort, saying, "You've made it this far, but this is where it ends." Encrid, unfazed, takes a deep breath and challenges them to fight with swords, claiming that real men battle with blades. He's still eager to keep testing himself. The enemy soldiers, annoyed by his audacity, call him a crazy fucker and unleash a volley of arrows, killing him on the spot. And so, another today ends in the life of our hero. This time, he returns to his dream. A single drop causes ripples in the water. An unknown entity calls him a foolish mortal, taunting him for walking into his own grave, mentioning that he has lost his mind. When he responds again, something feels different. He wakes up in bed, reflecting on the dream that seemingly appeared out of nowhere to curse him. Yet, he's unsure whether it was truly a curse or something deeper. Someone interrupts his thoughts, asking why he's just staring off blankly in such a pathetic state. The regressed knight remains silent, slowly lifting his chin to face the speaker. It's Rem, standing topless. He recalls that each time he's relived this day, Rem had always cursed the fog as a spell cast by the enemy. Our hero then recalls the enemy's odd formation, completely lacking in tactical foresight. It was as if they were protecting something, like the flag on the grass fields. But why were they doing that? He turns to Rem and asks if he knows anything about spells. Rem, surprised, questions why Encrid would bring that up so suddenly. My guy simply shrugs, replying that he just found it interesting and wanted to know more. Rem starts with a basic question, asking him if he knows the difference between magic and spells. The knight admits that he thinks magic is more common, but he's unsure. Rem agrees, but clarifies that the real difference lies in the need for a medium in spellcasting. Unlike magic, which can exist on its own, a spell requires a medium, and not just any medium, but one that is critically important. This information sparks an idea in our hero's mind. He now suspects that the fog was created by a spell, with the enemy's flag serving as the medium. If the flag is destroyed, the fog will disappear. While this seems promising, he knows it won't be easy to reach the flag. Curious, he then asks if Rem's tribe used to cast spells, knowing that spells originated from the west and Rem hails from the western frontier. Rem flexes, saying he has witnessed spellcasting firsthand, but most practitioners aren't actually spellcasters, they're hexcasters. With this new information, Encrid leaves the base camp. When Rem asks where he's heading, he simply replies that he's going to train. Ragna and our hero once again stand face to face for training. Ragna is pleased with their shared training background and mentions a technique called the Oniak sword technique, asking if he knows about it. Now, let's dive into the history of this legendary sword technique. About 500 years ago, there was a prodigy born on a sword farm. This child, against all odds, killed 12 bandits with nothing but a fireplace poker when they attacked the farm. Orphaned at a young age, the boy dedicated his life to mastering the sword. His prowess caught the attention of a nearby noble, who took him in as a ward. The boy, who would later be known as Leonidas Oniak, grew into a sword prodigy. However, despite his incredible gift, he was also cursed. By the age of 10, Leonidas began losing his strength and was fully paralyzed by age 12. The world lost what could have been the greatest swordsman in history as the prodigy faded from sight. But at the age of 20, Leonidas Oniak returned, defying all odds. Though still paralyzed, he immortalized himself in the history of swordsmanship by compiling and categorizing all known techniques into 5 categories, a feat that has shaped swordsmanship for centuries. The categories of swordsmanship created by Leonidas Oniak are as follows: the righteous elaborate sword, the heavy sword, the flowing confounding sword, the swift sword, and finally, the gentle parrying sword. This was all new information for Encrid, who had never encountered these classifications before. Leonidas didn't just master the sword, he rewrote its history, and the Oniak family became the most renowned house in the empire. The legacy of these techniques continues to shape modern swordsmanship, as they form the foundation of all schools today. Ragna explains that, at present, there are distinct regional styles: the northern heavy sword, the central righteous and flowing sword, the western swift sword, the southern confounding sword, and the eastern kai sword. Encrid feels like he's reading from an encyclopedia about swordsmanship. Ragna goes on to explain that his own style stems from the northern heavy sword tradition. He asks our hero if he knows the conscience of the beast, but the knight corrects him, reminding Ragna it's called the heart of the beast. Side Puff chimes in, claiming that the technique Ragna is teaching is far superior to the heart of the beast. This new technique is called concentration on a single point. It requires the practitioner to forget everything around them and focus solely on their own sword and their opponent's blade. Ragna demonstrates the technique, assuming a posture and thrusting his sword like a bullet. In a blink, the blade cuts Encrid's neck, and blood begins to ooze from the wound. The knight instinctively covers the wound with his hand, shocked at the speed of the attack. He wonders if it's even faster than Rem's axe, narrowly avoiding death. Ragna casually asks if our hero felt anything from the attack, but before he can finish, Rem arrives, furious. He accuses him of trying to kill the squad leader with such reckless maneuvers. The warrior shrugs, explaining that people concentrate better when facing death. Rem scoffs, mocking him by saying that no one can learn anything if they're decapitated, and he reminds him how long it took Encrid to master the heart of the beast. Side Puff retorts, suggesting that it's only natural for a barbarian like Rem to teach a primitive technique like that. The two resume their usual banter, while the regressed knight silently concludes that neither of them are particularly good teachers. Rem counters, pointing out that Ragna hails from the far north and is technically more of a barbarian than anyone else present. Calmly, he responds that he actually belongs to the southern barbarian tribes. Amused, Rem quips that he'll make sure Ragna's tombstone reads, "Lost his head to a southern barbarian." Encrid interrupts, reminding Rem that they need to leave, as they have departure orders. Before they part ways, the warrior advises our hero to remember the feeling he had just before death. He tells him that if he can truly master concentration on a single point, everything around him will fade, and his sword will move as if by instinct. It's similar to the heart of the beast, but while that technique dulls the mind in the face of death, the new technique sharpens one's alertness. Encrid knows he needs more experience to fully grasp this technique, but his focus now shifts to the medium of the enemy's spell, the flag. He's concluded that destroying the flag will lift the fog and allow them to escape this slaughter. In addition to gaining experience, my boy sets a new objective, the destruction of the flag. Though he considers that it might be easier with Rem and Ragna by his side, he dashes forward alone, cutting through the Aspen soldiers in his path. He's determined to try on his own until he can't anymore. The chapter ends with the striking image of our hero wading through the fog, slaying Aspen soldiers as he heads toward his goal. The chapter opens with our hero battling the Aspen soldiers head-on, employing a newly learned technique. This method proves invaluable, especially since he's faced countless deaths due to being unprepared. However, this time is different. His focus on a single point is working wonders. He has trained extensively to survive assassins, mastering techniques like sharpening his senses and embracing the heart of the beast to endure the battlefield. Yet, concentrating on a single point proves to be more effective than those methods. He returns to training with Ragna, who asks if he's grasped the technique yet. Ragna explains that if he had, he would have felt the tip of the blade slow down or something similar. However, it seems Encrid isn't getting it at all and wonders if the boldness from the heart of the beast technique is interfering with his new training. Ragna further elaborates that he should let everything fade except for the opponent's sword. Only then can he predict its path. He repeatedly asks Encrid if he's felt anything like that, but to no avail. To Ragna, it's like trying to teach a fish to climb a tree. Incrid ponders deeply, realizing that channeling his fear of death might not be the right approach for this technique. Hoping for some insight, he then asks his subordinate how he managed to learn it. The question surprises the blonde warrior, who reveals that he didn't actually learn it, he's been able to do it naturally all along. Natural talent, one of the most fascinating aspects of heroes. He adds that it's quite simple, as the name suggests, you just have to concentrate on a single point. This explanation makes our hero understand that he won't get any reasonable answers from him. Sighing, he concludes that he'll have to figure it out on his own without losing patience. He resolves to keep practicing the concentration on a single point, but for now, it's not his priority. His current plan is to bring down that flag to minimize damage to his allies and break through the enemy lines. The day resets once more, and a magical fog envelops Incrid's group, causing panic among the soldiers. But they need not worry, our hero is there. He loudly commands everyone to get down and raise their shields to protect themselves from the aerial attack. This time, the soldiers successfully raise their shields in time, saving many lives. After that, Incrid rushes forward, knowing exactly where the attacks will come from, even with his eyes closed. It's no surprise, considering he's repeated this day 300 times. That's plenty of time for anyone to learn. He charges ahead, slaying enemies one after another. They have no idea that he has become their worst nightmare. Some soldiers realize it's just one man causing such chaos in their lines, so they rush to stop him. Alas, their misfortune is sealed, as Incrid defeats them with just a few swings of his sword. One of their captains yells at his subordinates to get a hold of themselves and stop that rampaging madman. But little does he know, Incrid won't stop until he brings down that flag. He attacks the last soldier guarding the flag, and the force of his strike causes the soldier to fall against the flag's base, ultimately breaking it. This is how Incrid manages to take down the flag after his 10th reset of the day. Shockingly, the fog doesn't disappear even after his effort to destroy the flag. While he's trying to figure it out, he gets pierced by multiple enemy spears. One of the soldiers lurking behind him laughs wickedly, mentioning that he seems to know a bit about their spells, but unfortunately, he's been deceived. This revelation makes him realize that only one of the 6 flags is real, and only destroying the real one will help his allies. The other 5 are just decoys to protect it. Now, his next mission is to find the real one among the fakes. His next attempt begins with yet another reset of the day. He rushes forward again, prompting his companions to question his solo charge, but he's not in the mood to explain. He's calculating that he has a 1 in 5 chance of finding the real flag on the next try. He yells the same command to get down and raise shields, but this time he's too far away, and many soldiers fail to hear him. His haste creates a mess, as the allied soldiers fail to protect themselves from the arrows. This makes him wonder why they couldn't hear him like before. He thinks it might be due to his timing, or perhaps he needs to give them more time to catch their breath. On the 3rd reset of the day, he finally succeeds in destroying the 2nd flag. Unfortunately, it's another decoy, leading to his demise once more and leaving 4 more flags to contend with. He spends 5 more resets dismantling the 3rd flag, only to face the same fate, another fake, ending with his death and no progress made. Tackling the 4th flag takes 7 resets, but the outcome doesn't change, it's yet another counterfeit. Now, only 2 flags remain, giving him a 50% chance of uncovering the genuine one. From a distance, he scrutinizes the last 2 flags. He deduces that the furthest one is likely the real deal, but reaching it requires battling numerous enemy groups. The presence of the spellcaster suggests that the platoon commander awaits him there. With another reset, the cycle repeats, but this time the allies mount a robust defense. Afterwards, he asks Rem to join him, but the axe wielder deems him insane for attempting such a reckless move. There's method to his madness. It's the first time he's requested someone to accompany him on this charge. Not wanting to risk failure, he knows he can't afford any distractions en route to the distant flag. The plan involves using Rem as a decoy to draw enemy attention, allowing him to slip past unnoticed. Rem fits the role perfectly, taunting the foes with questions about the spellcaster while cutting them down one by one. A full year of repeated days has passed, over 365 resets on this single battlefield, yet victory remains uncertain. Nevertheless, he feels certain that this will be the final foggy day. Just as he's about to strike the flag's base, his sword is intercepted by another blade. To his surprise, the one who stopped his attack is none other than the platoon commander, Mitch Hurrier. This is the confrontation he's been yearning for. At last, fate has granted his wish. The sentiment is mutual. Both warriors have longed for this rematch. Mitch openly declares his desire to kill him personally. Incredibly, he doesn't remember Mitch, asking who he is. This shocks the commander. How could he forget him after only a few days? Unaware, he remains puzzled. After all, he's been reliving this day for a year, while in reality, only a few days have passed. He inquires about Mitch's identity and how he knows him. The commander replies that he'll remember once he's been stabbed, and with that, he lunges forward at full speed. He deftly dodges the flawless thrust and counters with a swift strike, forcing Mitch to barely evade. Mitch didn't anticipate such a move, wondering if this is the same man he battled in the grasslands. He realizes his opponent has improved immensely since their last encounter, leaving him stunned. Angered that his foe could match him in a single step, the commander contemplates his next move. Meanwhile, the swordsman advances again, delivering a powerful swing that forces Mitch to step back, though he blocks it effectively. Gazing into his adversary's eyes, Mitch notes his adherence to fundamental techniques, employing the righteous sword style. Surprisingly, he isn't limited to one method. He's blending it with the flowing sword technique, effectively deflecting incoming strikes. Blades clash repeatedly, sparks flying with each collision. It appears he has the upper hand, unsettling the commander's balance and instilling a hint of fear. Realizing he must concentrate entirely on the battle, Mitch understands that a single distraction could tip the scales. He acknowledges his foe as a worthy opponent, one who can truly challenge and help him grow. He decides to let go of concerns about the flag, the outcome, and even his sword techniques. Instead, he opts to use concentration on a single point, causing everything else to fade away except the enemy's blade. The commander enters a similar state of focus where only their swords exist. As a seasoned knight and leader of the Aspen soldiers, he wields this technique to perfection. In their next clash, he attacks with full force, disarming our hero and driving his sword into our hero's chest. Coughing up blood, the wounded warrior hangs on the heavy blade piercing him. With wide blue eyes, he gazes at his adversary and finally remembers him, the knight who guarded the flagpole in the grasslands. Hearing this, the commander fully introduces himself as Mitch Hurrier, platoon leader of Aspen Principality's Greyhound Squad. The injured fighter states his own name, mentioning he's the squad commander of Nalalia Kingdom, blood oozing from his mouth. A spear-wielding subordinate asks Mitch if this man is the enemy. The commander confirms, noting that his specialty is hiding. Another soldier comments on how wistful the defeated looks, but Mitch ignores it. What surprises him is that his fallen foe is smiling, something he can't quite understand. Meanwhile, the MC silently curses Ragna, realizing that the concentration born from fear of death wasn't what he needed. Instead, he required a true rival, someone exceptionally skilled who would put everything on the line and inspire him to do the same. Perplexed by the smile, Mitch calls him a madman as he withdraws his sword, unleashing a torrent of blood. Back at the camp, Ragna is teaching that concentration on a single point feels similar to the nervous sensation when one is dying. The captain responds coldly, giving Ragna the impression that he's losing interest and perhaps giving up. Just then, Rem arrives with news that everyone has been summoned. The captain instructs Ragna to head over, which hints that he's not quitting but is instead energized. Ragna finds his leader unusually spirited today, wondering if he should make the warm-up exercises even tougher. The next attempt on the battlefield begins, with familiar calls echoing around. He orders Rem to follow him again, but this time Ragna decides to join them. Rem calls him crazy for coming along, asking if he's taken an arrow to the head. Ragna retorts that Rem should watch ahead if he doesn't want an arrow lodged in his own skull. The trio charges forward, with Ragna and Rem bearing the brunt of the Aspen soldiers' attacks while their captain presses on to confront his ultimate foe. Once more, they clear a path, allowing him to face Mitch Hurrier. Standing before each other, he greets the commander sarcastically, calling him a friend and inviting him to fight. Mitch, serious, asks if he came all this way just to find him. Mockingly, he replies, asking if this is Mitch's first time receiving a confession, adding that he fell in love at first sight. The commander mentions that his squad is the persistent lovers of Greyhound and notes that this is the first time someone has sought him out, which makes our hero wonder if he's upset about it. This only angers Mitch further, so he lashes out, calling his chatter complete nonsense. However, for him, this experience is like heaven. He longs to have it happen again and again. Once more, he enters that state of intense concentration where everything around him fades away, leaving only the sensation of the sword in his hands. And yet again, despite his efforts, he is slain. With a single, decisive blow, the commander finishes him off, gazing down upon his fallen adversary. He remarks that he can't comprehend what possessed him to attack so recklessly, only to be defeated so easily. Truly, it's absurd. In that moment of defeat, he realizes his approach was wrong this time. He concludes that forced intention won't suffice. He needs to become naturally absorbed into the fight. Determined to get it right, he repeats the encounter once more but is slashed down again. He continues this relentless cycle over and over, solely in pursuit of finding that specific feeling required to master the elusive technique. By the 18th attempt, he is able to see the enemy's sword movements clearly. By the 28th, he can intentionally enter the state of deep concentration at will, indicating he is starting to truly grasp the skill. On the 48th attempt, he successfully deflects the blade using the techniques taught by his comrade. When his ally tries to stab him during practice, he remains perfectly still, focusing entirely on the tip of the approaching blade. At the critical moment, he redirects the attack with precision, leaving his companion utterly baffled. The side-swept-haired man can't believe the captain has learned the technique so rapidly. His friend asks incredulously if he just deflected the sword using the concentration on a single-point technique or if there was something else involved. He confirms that he achieved this feat through pure focus, meaning he has gained complete control over his body and weapon. He believes his power and technique have developed to a point where he cannot even compare them to his former self before these countless repeated days. Turning to leave the training ground, his comrade asks where he's heading, reminding him they're still in the midst of practice. He responds confidently that he's going to meet the platoon commander because it's time to overcome this day. The chapter ends on this cliffhanger, and honestly, I'd like to finish this day too, as it's already becoming overwhelming. Our boy is truly determined to conquer this day, desiring this to be his final encounter with the platoon commander. This time, he adjusts his strategy slightly and improvises from the very beginning. He informs the company commander about the enemy's spells, fabricating a story that he suddenly remembered seeing them during reconnaissance. This tale alarms the white-haired lady, who listens intently to everything he has to say. He tells her that the enemy soldiers were referring to a strange-looking man as the spellcaster. Upon hearing this, she orders him to elaborate further, and he provides all the details she might need to secure victory in the upcoming battle. The fog appears again, and the familiar cycle continues. He hopes the commanders are competent enough to handle the situation now that they've been thoroughly briefed. Meanwhile, his sole focus is to cut through Mitch Hurrier, which remains his ultimate objective for the day. He approaches the platoon leader once more, directly asking if he is Mitch Hurrier, which surprises the sturdy fellow that his full name is known by his opponent. Drawing his sword confidently, he tells him that he's always wanted to face him from the very start and that today he intends to defeat him. Without hesitation, he dashes forward, making the first aggressive move. He swings his blade vertically with great force, but the commander avoids it by leaping to the side, causing the sword to strike the ground with a resounding impact. The big man then counters with his own attack, but it is skillfully blocked, further agitating him. Boiling with frustration, he curses his adversary, but once again, his assault is nullified. This battle is truly pushing the commander to his limits, testing his skills like never before. They engage each other head-on, their eyes locked in a fierce and unyielding stare. At that critical moment, the knight asks if he had been hiding his true skills all along. He responds with a sly smile, neither confirming nor denying, leaving the question unanswered and adding to the tension of the duel. As they face off, the commander inquires about his name. When he replies, Incrid, the commander remarks that he will always remember it. This is quite a compliment for someone who wasn't even close to knighthood just days ago. Unfazed, Incrid responds that there's no need to worry. He'll be sure to remind him if he ever forgets. Entering a heightened state of focus, the zone, he activates the technique of concentrating on a single point. Incrid clearly perceives the trajectory of his opponent's sword and notices the subtle shift as the commander moves his weight to his right foot. Anticipating a diagonal slash, he evades it perfectly, thanks to the skills honed over countless repeated days and battles. All his experiences have culminated in this moment, allowing him to read his adversary's movements and gain the upper hand. For the first time, he manages to wound the commander, leaving a small scratch on his neck, though he receives a similar mark himself. But the duel is far from over. Incrid swings again, this time attacking from the side. The commander ducks just in time to avoid a devastating blow to his neck. Shocked, he had expected to finish the fight in just a few moves. Now, he's grappling with the realization that he's struggling against this determined warrior. Poor man, I wish I could tell him he's already defeated our hero nearly 100 times. Despite the surprise, the commander refuses to concede. He can't accept that someone who was no match for him mere days ago is now on the verge of victory. Analyzing his techniques, he realizes that his righteous and flowing sword styles are suited for parrying. He needs a powerful offensive move to end this. Adjusting his grip, he prepares to unleash his ultimate technique. Lowering his stance by bending his knees, he begins an attack by dragging the tip of his sword along the ground. This move starts from below and arcs upward in a wide slash, known as the wheel cut. As soon as the sword begins its ascent, Incrid instantly recognizes it. This is the technique that has killed him numerous times before because he couldn't see where or when it started. But not this time. He clearly sees the blade rising from the ground and counters it with a confident grin. The failure of this attack must have shaken the commander's confidence. Indeed, he can't believe that this average squad captain not only anticipated but also parried his signature move. This moment forces him to acknowledge that his opponent is no longer a novice. Now, a bit of history about the Hurriers in the Aspen Kingdom. They are one of the three main noble houses ruling the land. The House of Hurrier embodies the kingdom's brute strength, recruiting anyone who shows exceptional talent with the sword. The commander himself was brought in from a regional house, adopting the Hurrier name and proving his worth through sheer skill. By age 15, he had fought and defeated 2 adult knights. At 18, he bested a town's champion swordsman, incredible feats for someone so young. By 22, he became the champion of an entire city and rose to be one of the top 3 fighters in the Greyhounds through his abilities alone. Few could match his talents. He was so formidable that he often wondered why others trained until their muscles ached and hands bled, believing one only needed a few swings to master the sword. Of course, after growing content with his prowess, he grew complacent, which was a mistake he now regrets deeply. It's only understandable that a ton of unwanted despair envelops him at this critical moment. And after sensing his opponent's hesitation, Incrid seizes the opportunity. He disrupts the commander's balance, causing him to fall backward onto the ground. Without hesitation, he drives his sword just below the right shoulder. However, instead of delivering the final blow, our hero withdraws his sword, causing blood to spurt everywhere. His opponent is both mentally and physically exhausted, teetering on the brink of defeat. This is the perfect moment to end the fight with a single strike. The commander curses himself, realizing he had severely underestimated his foe. He was certain his last attack would secure victory. Muttering that his adversary isn't superior in strength or technique, our hero agrees but proudly points out that he still won. In immense pain, possibly from his first ever sword wound, the commander manages to stand, regretting that things might have been different had he not been so complacent. But it's too late now. My guy readies himself for the final attack, casually remarking that the battle was enjoyable. Just as his blade is about to reach the commander's neck, reinforcements arrive in the nick of time. A loud shout to protect their leader echoes across the battlefield as a blonde battalion commander intervenes, pushing our hero away. A soldier quickly presses a cloth against the wounded man's injury, anxiously asking about his condition as he gasps for air. The battalion commander orders subordinates to escort their leader to safety, commenting that he hadn't expected one man to cause such chaos within their ranks. The blonde commander then charges toward our hero, warning that he won't meet a peaceful end. Realizing he's now surrounded by enemies, a high-ranking officer and half a dozen soldiers armed with crossbows, he understands the dire situation he's in. Faced with this new challenge, he knows that breaking the flag and securing his escape are the obstacles he must overcome today. The commander orders his troops to fire, and a volley of arrows hurtles toward him. Another chapter, another day in the life of our protagonist, who is now fighting against the ultimate boss of the Aspen army. He is rushing towards the horde of soldiers led by their blonde commander. Incrid is contemplating taking on all the attacks and keeps advancing toward the target, as he knows the limitations of his skills and the number of enemies, which makes it impossible for him to avoid all these attacks. Upon seeing him advancing, the commander yells at him not to even dare take him on directly and stops our boy with a vertical swing. Our hero blocks it using his sword, but the impact of this attack is so strong that even Incrid's sword develops some cracks. Meanwhile, he has noticed that the commander's sword technique is extremely heavy after just a single attack from the battalion commander. He slides back, wondering if he needs to die so many times again to overcome this battle and come out as a winner because he needs to bring down the flag at any cost, as it is the need of the hour and crucial for his side's survival. Incrid comes up with a plan to take down the flag and throws a dagger toward it, attempting to tear down even a bit of it because the spell medium will eventually stop working even if the flag is only slightly damaged. But his first throw fails, and the dagger just passes through because he aimed for the flag directly. The blonde realizes our boy's intentions straight away and swings his sword to take him down, but Incrid dodges it almost perfectly by ducking and dashes to the side, bringing out another dagger from his waistband. He gets on his feet immediately, launching another dagger, and this time he aims for the connection between the flag and the flagpole. Surprisingly, this shot is more perfect than anything, and our boy has fulfilled his primary objective after countless deaths. Although he has taken down the flag, he is disappointed in the leadership for not paying attention to his information about the spells. However, the lady commander did inform the command beforehand that there would be a spell and asked for the resources to combat it, but they haven't prepared anything for it. She believes that the kingdom is rotten to the core, and they just sent a sprouted potato of a man to command the front lines. She is putting all her skills into taking down the enemies in the dense fog. However, she fears that if this situation continues, they are going to be wiped out. Suddenly, she notices that the fog has started to disappear, a glimmer of hope for the kingdom's soldiers. Meanwhile, a wave of terror spreads across the lines of Aspen soldiers as they rush backward, worrying about their flag. This has completely changed the flow of the battle, and the lady commander understands perfectly that it is now their time to shine because the fog has disappeared, which has completely baffled the enemy soldiers, who were heavily reliant on this spell to win the battle. She orders her men to counterattack, and the kingdom's soldiers rush forward with boosted confidence to kill all of the enemies with their charge attack. The white-haired lady is truly thanking the gods for turning things in their favor. While searching for the person responsible for this miracle, she notices the MC in a dire condition among the enemy lines. She can't believe that this squad leader is the ultimate hero. Incrid is in a really messed up condition, with a broken sword and arrows pierced into his body. He is cursing his luck for messing up, as he initially thought that he would run into Ragna and Ren after destroying the flag, but they are not in sight, and he is surrounded by the Aspen soldiers even after retreating to the friendly lines. On the other hand, Rem is on a killing spree of his own, threatening the Aspen soldiers to bring the spellcaster to him as soon as possible, otherwise they are going to die immediately. Meanwhile, the fog has played a cruel prank on Ragna, who is fighting his own soldiers, a not-so-nice moment of friendly fire. He is literally standing in front of their commander's tent, and the guards are unable to comprehend why he is in such a posture. After a brief pause, he finally realizes that he's on the wrong side. But it's too late, and a clear warning of execution comes from the commander's guard. The guards find him really crazy, but one can't even blame the blonde for this. Within enemy lines, Incrid is acting as a lone wolf with a broken sword, while the enemy soldiers are all over him. They are annoyed by his stubbornness as he tries to survive in this precarious situation. One of them swings a sword at him, ordering him to just give up and die, but it looks like he'll have to call an ambulance for himself. The black puma attacks the soldier out of nowhere. Our boy is as shocked as any of us because he can't believe what he is witnessing. This is the same panther that he saw in the tall grass fields during their raid. The Aspen soldiers are stunned by this creature and aim their crossbows to take it down. But this panther is fast as lightning, slaying and destroying these soldiers in the blink of an eye. They try to hold their ground, but it is a hopeless situation for them, as the black cat has cut the bowstrings of their weapons and is guarding our boy like a loyal dog. I'm sorry to call it that, but he is literally guarding him. Following this encounter, our boy asks the panther to leave from here, as it could turn out really bad for him. Meanwhile, the blonde commander has just returned, praising the eternally regressing hero for being a little too special. He is really disgusted by Incrid's existence, considering he has just destroyed the hopes for his Greyhound's victory. He is prepared to take the MC down, and right then enters the platoon leader, who goes by the name of Vengeance. He orders Incrid to stand back and watch how he will save him from this Lord Commander. Isn't it ironic to stand up after everything has been done already? Anyways, it is time for a fight between two commanders. The platoon leader dashes forward with full confidence. However, he soon bites the dust and falls feet away from the initial position after just a single blow. He is lying on his back on the ground, cursing the enemy commander for being so strong. A man of words and not of deeds fits perfectly here. Incrid is literally surprised to see this lousy commander crawling like a toddler on the ground. The ashamed platoon leader orders his brigade to shoot their bows at the enemy commander. There is nothing more shameful than using a long-range attack after being humbled by their commander. The blonde doesn't hold back or get fumbled by the dozens of arrows coming his way. He takes them head-on, while dodging with his sword. This sight sends chills down the spine of the kingdom's commander, who believes that this guy is an absolute monster. Surprisingly, this is not the end of his display of strength, as he knocks out the puma coming at him from a blind spot using the handle of his sword. This guy is too good for the lot and is rushing towards the protagonist to avenge the shame. After so many times, the eyes of Incrid have become accustomed to the new skill, and he has almost mastered concentrating on a single point. He can see and anticipate the movements of his enemy and plans his next move accordingly. Furthermore, he realizes that he can't parry that sword with his current strength, as the earlier one got broken because of that, so he concludes that he needs to let it flow just like Mitch-Hurrier did. It is a continuous phase of learning for our boy, and he uses his enemy's skill to his advantage, letting the sword slide through and putting the blonde in a really bad position. The battalion commander of Greyhound realizes straight away that this is a technique of his subordinate Mitch-Hurrier. Incrid is smiling with pride that he was able to make it work, and that too in front of this mighty commander. Just then, Mr. Vengeance spoils the fun and swings his sword to wave off the blonde. The commander has now realized that they have lost, and fighting in this position is equal to a group massacre, so he clenches his teeth in frustration and turns around. Before leaving, he informs our hero that he is not going to forget him, and Incrid confidently responds that he should do as he wishes. The Greyhound's commander orders his soldiers to retreat, as their plan failed and now they will have to come up with another strategy to defeat them. Meanwhile, the platoon leader rushes to help the injured Incrid, who is taking care of the puma. He asks him to leave from here, as he doesn't have bandages and his injuries are severe, but our boy is more concerned about the puma as it saved his life earlier. Mr. Vengeance literally calls him a crazy bastard for not putting his life first and lifts him up onto his shoulders. Meanwhile, Incrid is not leaving the puma on the battlefield and picks it up with his injured arm. The leader orders his third squad to protect them from the rear, as they are retreating two from the field, necessary in this situation. Mr. Vengeance might be a bogus commander, but he surely cares deeply about his soldiers. He is pampering our boy really well, asking him not to close his eyes, as he doesn't want him to lose consciousness at this point. But Incrid is bleeding too much. Suddenly, shock overcomes his body, and he loses consciousness. He goes straight to the mysterious divine creature, who questions him if he has accomplished what he wanted to. The being calls him a persistent bastard for struggling that much, making him curious about what drives him to act like that. The discussion continues among the squad members of Incrid about the scenes that unfolded on the battlefield. Everyone is sharing their point of view and highlighting the mistakes of their comrades in the battle. Meanwhile, someone is trying to calm them down because their squad leader is resting right now. Finally, our boy starts to show a bit of life and moves his hand, but his senses are still vague as he tries to figure out what is happening and the thing beneath his hand. After a minute, he opens his eyes and sees that the black puma is sleeping beside him, cuddling his left arm. The puma is in a zone of its own at the moment. The whole squad is present there, looking at him like he is a trophy in a closet. Rem, being Rem, mocks him, saying he really thought he died this time, but it looks like he's finally awake. The MC tries to get up, asking them what is going on here. Meanwhile, someone is thanking God for answering his prayers. Incrid is feeling thirsty, so he asks for water, and one of them gives him a glass of water while telling him that he lost a lot of blood in the field. The orange head informs him that a medic has done a thorough checkup and said that there won't be any long-lasting effects. This guy believes that the goddess of luck must be by his side, as he recovered really quickly. but all we can see is a big black cat with him, and Crid is thinking about the situation, wondering if he must have passed out during the retreat while patting his new pet. They are finally relieved, and now it is time for them to take a bit of a rest, so a couple of them leave from there. And Crid is thinking that he got through another day, irrespective of the fact that it lasted for so many days. Surprisingly, Rem is still there, staring at him strangely. This really makes our hero a bit uncomfortable, so he inquires of Rem what he is staring at, mocking him by asking if he wants to pet this little fellow. But it looks like Rem is going through a thought process of his own and declines his offer by saying that he is not interested in beasts. He jumps to the main point, asking his squad leader about the spell and its nature with a dead straight face. He clearly doesn't look like a guy who's going to buy some random excuse as an answer, and Crid realizes the depth of this question too, and he knows that Rem will not believe him if he randomly tells him about the repeating todays, so he will have to lie to him. At the same time, he is unsure about lying too, because Rem has always been faithful to him, so he needs to return this favor with kindness. He smartly answers that he was friends with someone like him who was a settler too, and he just suspected that it was a spell based on what he had heard from him about the history of spells and spellcasters. The monkey guy stays silent at this answer, as if he is trying to process the reality of this response, and Crid believes that he has successfully dodged this bullet without lying, considering he did not lie to him, and he definitely heard it from a settler, who was actually Rem in reality. Upon hearing that, the axe guy stands up, mentioning that it's fine if he doesn't want to tell him the full truth, and warns him further that he should not get interested in spells. These remarks make our boy think that Rem just looks stupid, but in reality, he is really quick-witted. Time for some counter-questioning, so our hero asks his friend about his adventures on the battlefield, to which he responds that he was really interested in the person who set up that flag and cast the spell. So he rushed there, but he didn't like the face of that caster. Ultimately, he chopped off his head with a swing of his axe and sent it flying away like a football. This really pacifies the squad leader, as he is happy that Rem took care of the spellcaster whom he couldn't see in that chaos. Meanwhile, the orange head is trying to grab the paws of the black puma. The guy is literally treating this beast like a Persian cat. The beast doesn't like it at all, so it roars at this clingy guy to scare him away, and he immediately jumps to hide behind the other bed. And Crid warns him that he should be careful because this beast can shred him apart in a second. At this moment, the orange head mentions that his heart will be ripped to shreds if he gives up on 10,000 krona, which really surprises our boy, and he asks him about this price figure. He informs the squad leader that he heard from Henry, the guy who went on patrol with him. He mentions that these beasts have blue eyes, so they are known as lake panthers, and interestingly, they are supposed to hold the energy of the land inside them. Moreover, he reveals that each of its claws is worth over 10,000 krona, and amazingly, they can keep on growing these claws over and over again. This really takes Crid to the world of economics, as he tries to break down this equation. He is thinking that a single bronze is worth 1 krona, so 10,000 must be equal to a gold coin, which is technically more than his pay. Switching over to the scenes of the battlefield after the disappearance of the fog. The kingdom dominated the battle easily since the fog was gone, but the battle itself was inconclusive. However, since then, they haven't gone marching or ventured out. Meanwhile, Crid is wondering about the parry he did earlier, which was actually the skill of Mitch Hurrier. He is not sure if he will be able to pull that off again. I believe at this point all of us know that he is not going to settle without getting this answer. He starts stretching his body, and his comrade warns him that he is not going to heal properly if he keeps on moving like this. However, the squad leader shuts him down by telling him that he is not overdoing it, assuring him that he can move this much easily. Ragna jumps in too, advising him to take some rest, as the most he can do at the moment is stretching. This gives Rem a chance to mock the blonde, so he sarcastically asks if Ragna is trying to incorporate his laziness into the leader too, while ordering him to move aside and stop standing in the walkway. As soon as the blonde hears it, he gets all fired up, and a banter starts between the two of them. Right then, Crid tells them that he has some questions regarding the sword techniques. He mentions that he managed to use a technique that he never practiced before, and he has never done anything like that before, so is it normal? Rem believes that it is perfectly normal and that there is nothing special about it, considering he can use the heart of the beast, which enables him to actually see what the enemy is doing. So technically, he would have been able to see how they swing the sword and how they use their strength. On the contrary, Ragna believes that it should be easier since he has learned the basics, and he also succeeded with concentration on a single point, which enables a person to see more than needed. Although, he believes that Crid must have gotten pretty lucky too, because at his level it would have only succeeded after hundreds of real battles. This last line makes our boy realize that he has actually mastered it because the day that just passed was not just a single day for him, it was hundreds of days of overwhelming struggles. He got stronger through his hard work, and not just through memorizing patterns in the repeating days. He is now confident in himself, despite his pathetic talent. He is getting stronger, a hope that never dies. He addresses his former trainers, who are about to have a one-on-one, and informs them that he wants to have a duel with them. They are stunned by this demand, as Rem mentions that they call him a madman but their squad leader is something else. This is the first time even Ragna agrees with Rem, who also believes that this is not a good idea, questioning what he hopes to achieve in this condition. He clearly tells him that duels are off the table until he recovers completely. Here comes the elf-eared lady, asking Incrid if he was the one who broke the spell. Typical higher-up stuff. Anyway, our boy was prepared for this, as he knew that Command would start asking questions soon, but he is surprised to see that the company commander is doing it herself. Incrid informs her that he was the one, as he saw it while on patrol and knew a little bit about it before. The company commander asks him how he found the real one among those decoys, to which he responds that he guessed, such a poor answer that can make anyone suspicious. The company commander turns away without any further query, which prompts our boy to ask if this is all she came to ask. She responds that she also wanted to see his face, as she reveals that she believes that fate has brought them together. These last words have really put the protagonist off balance, as he wonders what fate has to do with anything. Meanwhile, his pals start making fun of the situation, asking him about the secret he is hiding. But he immediately tells them to shut up, as there is nothing like that. Even the orange head mocks him, telling him that he knew Incrid was suited to start a host bar with him, so he is ready to make the terms, and Incrid also shuts him up. He is really feeling uncomfortable now, wondering why she is interested in him, although she is his boss's boss. The orange head comes inside with the news that a squire from the Night Order is here, which lightens up the face of our hero, and his mind goes straight to the Scarlet Cloak Night Order. This current battalion is called the Cypress Division, which was named after a knight, and that knight Cypress is part of the Scarlet Cloak Night Order. The knights are especially skilled, which is true even across the entire continent, and that is the reason why a knight order has many more people besides knights. These people include squires, servants, and students of knights. Once a squire is approved by their knight, they become a proto-knight, and far above them exist knights who have surpassed humanity. According to his knowledge, a squire doesn't take part in battles without their knight, so he assumes that this squire is probably about to become a proto-knight. Suddenly, there are shouts of soldiers heading towards the battlefield. The whole squad gets ready too, as they believe that maybe they were all waiting for the squire and now they are heading towards battle. They prepare to leave the camp while advising him to take some rest. But our hero really wants to see him. Incrid is standing there like a statue, which gives Rem a hint that he wants to come with them, and he knows that reasoning is absurd in front of this stubborn squad leader. This is the idea he has kept as a dream. A small piece of that dream is now in front of his eyes. The whole army is on the battlefield, but they are not advancing. Amidst this chaos, he sees a man wearing a red cloak, walking steadily towards the enemy's lines like a lone wolf. He is walking with such confidence, even though hundreds of arrows are aimed at him. The Aspen's leader orders his soldiers to fire their arrows towards the advancing knight, and in a few seconds, the whole sky is filled with hundreds and thousands of arrows. It looks like a rain of arrows, but the squire is not fazed at all. Suddenly, he lowers himself to the ground, taking a stride as if he is about to run in the Olympics 100-meter race. Ragnar notices that he has used determination on his legs, and then he dashes towards the enemy soldiers at the speed of light. He must have some kind of relationship with Flash. In the blink of an eye, he is out of the showering arrows and is now right in front of the enemy soldiers. He swings his sword, blowing away the front lines of soldiers, and a few of them can be seen flying like plastic bags. This is the ultimate power of a proto-knight, which is nothing but a moment of admiration for Incrid. The next chapter begins with the squire causing havoc in the enemy lines, making everyone's jaws drop. Everyone is stunned to see this extraordinary display of strength and technique that has spread a wave of terror across the Aspen's soldiers, as they can be seen ordering a retreat because they have no idea how to face this proto-knight. Meanwhile, their leader on horseback is cursing them and ordering them to stop his advance at any cost. These are the last words the world will remember him for, as his head gets chopped off the very next second. The proto-knight jumps on top of the headless leader, whose neck is presenting a scene of a volcano with blood spurting out. It is absolute cinema, and Incrid's squad is trying to break down the scenes unfolding in front of their eyes. Rem believes this guy is called the war specialist for this specific reason. Meanwhile, Ragnar believes that this is the level he should be able to attain easily. The redhead thinks that the enemy commander was a fool, as he had at least 5 opportunities to stop him. On the other hand, the big guy is praying for the slain souls, while the orange head believes that this is about to be done without their help. Incrid is trying to figure out the technique of the squire's sword. He is confused about the technique, as he believes that it has elements of the heavy and swift sword, in addition to the righteous technique. The righteous sword is just an intricate sword technique which lures the opponent into one's moves. Subsequently, the heavy sword is a hulking, weighty sword technique that utilizes its strength to cut through everything and dominate the opponent. On the contrary, the confounding technique is a confusing one, as it tricks and ambushes the opponent. The Valen sword technique falls under this school. Meanwhile, the swift sword is a fast sword technique that overwhelms the enemy with its speed. The flowing sword is a soft and gentle sword technique. It parries the enemy's attack and retaliates. He believes that the heavy and swift swords are at odds, but he can see both of them in the squire's technique. He has concluded that they might be different in character, but all of these techniques started from one source, and if one understands the commonality between all 5, wielding a sword like it is a living object, one can reach the top. He closes his eyes to imagine this in his head. Rem and Ragna notice his silence and closed eyes, realizing that he is trying to understand the depth of this. The kingdom's soldiers charge forward to take down the remaining enemies. In this chaos, the whole squad encircles their squad leader, as they believe that he is trying to overcome something and they should protect him from being disturbed. Our boy is in a zone, believing that nothing changes despite his understanding. He realizes that understanding is nothing, rather, it exists to show him how much further he has to claw up to overcome this gap. This is the moment where he has made up his mind to claw up to the top, to see the reality. Both armies are tearing each other apart, while Incrid's squad is silently protecting him as he is hiking to the top of this steep wall. The kingdom's soldiers are winning, as the enemy has lost the will to fight. They are bent upon redrawing the maps today after killing every single one of them. Everyone is now dancing and jumping to celebrate the victory at this front. The war is coming to its end. The following winter and spring will be busy. The Principality of Aspen is controlled by 3 main families. Among them, the first one is Aspen, the sovereign. After that, there is Hurrier, the mighty, and the last one is Atkins, the administrator. The sovereign king is deeply disturbed and depressed, cursing the enemies for breaking the gentleman's agreement not to bring any knights into this battle. Meanwhile, the administrator corrects him by explaining that they use the frog general as an excuse, because the frogs do require a knightly response, so they have no valid excuse either. The king is now cursing the frog general for advancing without any orders. However, it is a known fact that the frogs, as a species, generally do as they please, and they would have found some other excuse either way. Atkins blames Hurrier, saying that this wouldn't have happened if the spell had succeeded. This enraged the king, who exclaims that the Greyhounds will pay for this, and even the blonde commander is not going to spare them. After the lengthy war, the Aspen forces headed back, and so did they. At the border guard, a remote fortress city of the kingdom near Aspen, the city is heavily militarized, with 1 in 5 people being a soldier. A ceremony is taking place in the city, where a top-ranking officer is praising the Norelia heroes who have led this war to victory. He announces that from here on out, he will reward the common soldiers who have proven their courage and loyalty. He announces a reward for the 4th squad leader of the 4th platoon of the 4th company, Mr. Incrid, for destroying the foul spell of the Aspens. Upon this announcement, our boy steps up to receive his rewards, while the other jealous squads can't believe that this useless squad leader was the one who broke that spell. Everyone is pointing fingers at him, saying he is really weak and that it is impossible for him to have done this incredible feat, deeming that he is actually taking credit for his squad. They even say that he must have kissed the commander's ass in other parts, as it is the only way for him to get on that stage. At this point, his old friend from the raid in the tall grass takes his side and silences these complaining soldiers. The blonde from the raid is there too, telling these dumb soldiers that Incrid is not someone they can talk to in this manner. Those who have seen him know for a fact that this guy is much more than that. The commander rewards him with a bag full of coins, and by the size of it, one can judge that it is quite a lot. The orange head asks him what he is going to do with this money. According to him, the most appropriate place to spend it is a brothel or a pub, but Incrid tells him to recommend a good store to him. He orders his subordinate to take him to the best blacksmith in the city. The funky guy can't believe that he is going to spend all that money to buy a sword. He tries his best to drag him out of the shop, telling him that the regular issued sword is not that bad, and there are also so many swords lying around on the battlefield. He has also picked up plenty of swords from there, which is enough for a lifetime supply for the whole squad. Nevertheless, our hero is going to do what he wants to do. He has made up his mind to become a knight, and to achieve that, he needs to prove his strength and his skills. He informs his subordinate that he is going to take the soldier promotion exam because his time as a lowly foot soldier is over. The story picks up with our boy deeply immersed in shopping, almost as if he were a girl. He is searching for a very expensive and branded sword, which even causes his friend to question the reason behind spending so much money on a sword. I believe this guy has never had a girlfriend, otherwise he would never have questioned that. Incrid's eyes are fixed on one of the swords, and he feels that this is the one, while telling his comrade that he is going to take a soldier promotion exam. Upon hearing that, the orange-headed friend questions his intentions because, as far as he knows, this guy was never interested in promotions, making an exam out of the question. To this, our boy responds that he can't stay down here forever. The boy becomes really pumped up after hearing that and plans to set things up for his captain. This is the least he could do for his squad leader. Let's delve into the ranking system of Norelia, which is designed to boost the morale of soldiers, encouraging them to excel in their ranks and reach higher levels. It is divided into 5 ranks, from lowest to highest in ascending order. However, there is an exception in this ranking system based on the strength of the soldier. For example, if a soldier is extraordinarily stronger than the existing scale, they are designated to a special rank and will be treated differently according to their rank. The promotion exams are structured so that, in order to be promoted, soldiers must duel 3 individuals in the rank they are aiming for and win all 3 of them. On the other hand, this event is a fun sport for the other soldiers who are there to witness the duels, as it always turns into a betting game. This is exactly what the orange-headed friend is doing, seizing every opportunity to earn. He is making an announcement to bet on the squad leader, and Incrid's opponent definitely has a big mouth, as he insults our boy for attempting to enter the medium rank straight away. He believes that winning a single award on behalf of his squad has gone to his head, and this is why he is getting ahead of himself. The protagonist doesn't entertain this guy, as he is lost in his own thoughts about the background of his opponent. This guy is not an easy nut to crack because he is highly skilled even among the medium ranks, and he also hails from a famous mercenary group. In the background, the medium-ranked soldiers can be seen taunting Incrid and booing him. Well, we all know that our boy is going to shut their mouths soon. In the betting box, almost everyone has bet on the medium-ranked soldier, while there is only one guy who has placed a bet on the squad leader. You'd better believe that this guy must be an idiot to bet on this low-ranked captain. The orange-headed friend starts laughing at this and enjoys their banter, mentioning that they can't be sure of the results until they see it. I bet it must be this orange-headed friend who has put a bet on the squad leader. Incrid adopts his stance to begin the fight with a clear head, as he knows that there's no chance of him dying in this case like earlier, when he used to get stronger by dying over and over again. He knows that he only has a single chance to win this battle, so he needs to look ahead and make sure not to let his guard down. Moreover, his pathetic skills and limited hard work put him at a disadvantage compared to most of the guys here, so he would never have had a chance to go against them before. He gives himself pretty good advice that he should not relax about it and fight this battle as if his life depends on it. This is the only way that he can get through this battle. The opponent charges at him like a mad bull, calling him an idiot, but he doesn't get bothered by it and focuses on using the same parry technique that he learned in his last battle. He believes that if he can pull it off and create an opening, then victory will be his. Surprisingly, that's exactly what happens, as he successfully creates an opening and swings his sword, causing the guy to lose his balance. Moreover, the opponent loses his sword too and hurts his fingers in the process. Incrid watches it carefully and is unable to grasp what exactly happened in those nanoseconds. Meanwhile, the challenger is crying over the fact that his fingers got twisted. Anyways, our hero silences his opponent by striking him with the handle of his sword, knocking him out with his brutal strength. The defeated fighter falls to the ground unconscious, blood oozing from his mouth. This is how our boy seals his first victory in the promotion exam, although he is unsure why this guy was so weak considering he is from the medium rank group. The result of this duel catches everyone off guard, as they never imagined this would happen. Many of them vent their frustration on the orange-headed friend, accusing him of being the only one who bet on Incrid because he already knew how strong he was. However, this wasn't the case, as the orange-headed friend placed a bet on him because his side of the box was empty. He never thought in his wildest dreams that the squad leader was this skilled. These remarks lead others to judge him for not trusting his squad leader. On the other hand, Incrid is assessing the situation, unable to understand why this medium-rank soldier was so weak. He thinks he might have let his guard down because the duel ended so quickly. He dismisses these thoughts and clears his mind to face the second challenger. The gray-haired guy approaches him, telling him not to get too cocky as he only got lucky in the last battle. This challenger is a spear wielder, part of the heavy infantry, which is the strongest in their battalion. Incrid gets back in the zone, thinking that this might be a lot tougher than the previous opponents. The mustache guy uses various techniques, like moving the tip of his spear to distract our hero. However, Incrid has already anticipated this and knows that he will launch a surprise attack after the distraction. Just as the challenger comes in with a sudden attack to take him out from a long distance, our boy dodges it perfectly and shifts his balance to the right. He carefully watches his opponent's movement but is confused by the fact that this guy has thrust his spear from such a range, which is surprising. He doesn't let his guard down, suspecting that this might be a trick and that the challenger has some petty technique up his sleeve. However, the protagonist's suspicion fades as soon as he reads the expression on his opponent's face, a sore loser who has just missed his attack and is unsure about what to do next. Trusting his instincts, he concludes that it is now his turn to attack. With that in mind, he kicks the challenger in the guts with full might, sending him flying into the air like a football. This is how our future knight brings down his second opponent and wins this duel too. The whole crowd rises to their feet to witness this incredible feat, which dispels their doubts about his skills. They are now sure that his 2 consecutive victories are not a fluke or a coincidence, as it is not normal to take down 2 medium-ranked soldiers. No one from the crowd wants to challenge the squad leader anymore, and the orange-headed friend specifically announces for anyone who wants to join the challenge to come forward. A whole lot of spectators step up, laughing at the pathetic medium-category soldiers. One of the seniors calls them idiots for looking down on Incrid, and now they are scared to face him. Upon hearing that, his partner mentions that he was also among those people, and he shuts him up immediately. Incrid's partners from the raiding team are also witnessing this duel. The guy who lost to him in those fields wants to have a rematch, claiming he has been training with Mac for months. However, Mac tells him not to even try, because Incrid has become way stronger, and at this point, even Mac doesn't stand a chance against him. In the stands, Rem is forcing a guy to battle the squad leader because he was making a lot of fuss earlier, accusing the squad leader of kissing the commander's ass to win that reward. The soldier gets pumped up immediately, exclaiming that he is not at all scared of him. However, Incrid doesn't care about his opponent anymore and is thinking about how his days of struggle made him this much stronger. He recalls the stabbing soldier in his first duel today, then the assassin in the second one, and most recently the battle with Mitch Hurrier. He realizes that these experiences and his daily practice with his comrades have brought him to this point. He also remembers the lesson from his old teacher to never underestimate his opponent. He always thought that this advice was irrelevant to him, as he never thought he would get the chance to look down on any opponent. But things have changed now. He isn't even bothered by the mockery from his opponent and smiles it away because he knows that he has become strong enough to bring this guy down. This is the first time he is dominating his opponents, and he is completely enjoying it. The second duel begins, and this is the first time our boy has initiated the fight. He pounces on his opponent like a lion and slams his sword into the opponent's sword, causing him to lose his balance. Norelia respects strength, and this is why it is called the Kingdom of Knights. Incrid uses his power to smash his sword against his opponent's sword, shattering it into pieces. As soon as the sword breaks, so does his opponent's heart. He loses consciousness and falls onto his back on the ground. Seemingly, a rather precarious situation arises for Incrid because he is now deprived of his sword. The special soldier tries to capitalize on this opportunity and pounces at him as if his opponent were a helpless deer. "But don't you dare, sir," he warns. The captain draws a dagger from his waist belt, and now both of them are going all out against each other. Their weapons are just a few inches away from their heads when the lady commander intervenes in the battle. She pushes them apart by swinging her sword, exclaiming that they must end their duel immediately because if it continues any longer, they will kill each other. Incrid immediately backs off, although he was enjoying the battle, and the challenger is restrained by the entire fourth squad as they surround him. The special soldier believes that Incrid was simply lucky and saved by his companions. He looks at his fellows, telling them, "Don't get too excited because it was just a duel," while warning them that if they try to pull off this kind of stunt in the future, they will end up with extra holes in their bodies. Incrid remains unfazed by what is happening around him, pondering how he almost lost when he lost sight of his movements in the end, and realizing that if the duel had continued, things would have turned out badly. The border butcher compliments Incrid, saying that he fights really well, while adding that he didn't expect anything in particular from him, but he is impressive and cannot ignore this duel. He decides to acknowledge the battle and introduces himself as Torres, the platoon commander of the border guards, by offering his hand to greet Incrid. Incrid also introduces himself, providing his company, platoon, and squad number. Everyone is shocked to learn that this man is not just some random soldier, rather, he is a platoon commander of the esteemed border guards. This revelation makes them realize that their comrade has just fought a special rank soldier, and all of them begin jumping and cheering for Incrid. This is the moment he finally earns his due respect and recognition from everyone. They are appreciating and cheering his extraordinary skills, so he reacts like a proper star to honor their love and respect. This reaction impresses the platoon commander as well, and he appreciates Incrid's style amidst their cheers. In the meantime, he wishes to meet him again soon, referring to him as a high-rank soldier. With this step, our boy has gotten one step closer to his ultimate goal. Later that evening, Mr. Graham, the 1st Company commander of heavy infantry, also known as the Turtles, arrives with a proposal for Incrid to join his company. He informs Incrid how worthy this offer is, as his company is the most important heavy infantry unit in the battalion. This is not the first proposal Incrid has received since his duels. Other company commanders have also approached him with offers to join them, which makes him wonder if this attention is due to his rank or because he has shed the spell. Mr. Graham believes that things will change once Incrid accepts this offer, and he will be promoted to higher ranks with a brighter future. However, Incrid rejects the offer without any further consideration. Mr. Graham is displeased and offers that if the refusal is due to the 4th Company commander, he can have a word with her, but our boy shuts him down here as well. The company commander notices that Incrid is unfazed and unbothered by this, so he turns away, mentioning that he is still interested in having Incrid join in case he changes his mind later on. Incrid doesn't want to upset him, so he offers to send Rem to his company, but Mr. Graham immediately rejects this, saying that he doesn't need that crazy bastard. Graham turns back, expressing his gratitude for saving lives in that battle, while complimenting Incrid to continue performing such incredible feats. The money monger appears on the scene and asks if he should pack the bags, as this time the person who arrived is the 1st Company commander. But our hero tells him that he is not interested in going there either. This disappoints his fellows, and they question his intentions behind rejecting all the offers. They believe there is no basis for his refusals, as he will be treated well everywhere at this point. Incrid looks down as if he is deep in thought and is about to respond when another person arrives, diverting everyone's attention toward the door. Surprisingly, it is the same man from the border guards, greeting Incrid passionately. He doesn't waste any time and directly asks our boy to join the border guards. Well, if this isn't the best offer of the day, then what is? He exclaims. This offer puts Incrid on alert, and he immediately weighs the pros and cons. He knows that the border guards work directly under the crown, making it a much better offer altogether. Rem is also considering this offer and agrees with Incrid that it is far better than the others. He believes Incrid would be a fool not to accept this offer, as it is something he couldn't even dream about. Torres is full of praise for the protagonist as he declares that he realized Incrid's potential as soon as they exchanged their first blows. He states that he wants to fight harder against someone like Incrid. He believes that the best place for a talent like Incrid is the border guards because, by joining them, he will receive hellish training and insane challenges. Coming to the border guards will allow Incrid to reach his full potential. Incrid has finally proven himself in front of the large audience, and they now believe that he is actually the spellbreaker who destroyed the flag. They realize that he wasn't riding on his squad's achievements, rather it was his own prowess. The whole crowd starts to chant Spellbreaker, showing their gratitude for saving their lives in that battle. He will no longer be known simply as Incrid, but as Incrid the Spellbreaker. The orange-headed friend rushes to congratulate him for achieving medium rank, but our hero tells him that he still needs to strive for a higher rank, which shocks his pal. Upon hearing those words, a man from the crowd stands up, finding the entire scenario very interesting. This man has an eagle patch on his outfit, belonging to the border guard, positioned right under the wing of the crown. He is a member of the elite squad composed of high-ranking members and above, and this guy is known as the Border Butcher. He approaches the ground and respectfully calls the squad leader by his name, ultimately asking to have a duel with him as well. A fairytale ride for our boy begins. Let's move to the scenes where the protagonist has to face a superior special grade soldier, which can actually elevate him to new heights. The whole crowd silently watches the unfolding scenes right in front of them, while Ragna and Rem discuss the difficulty level of this case. Ragna silently listens to Rem, thinking about the fact that the border guard is almost equivalent to Aspen's greyhounds, meaning this guy can be as strong as Mitch Hurrier was, making it an interesting battle. Incrid is aware of this too, so he is also interested in finding out what will happen if he fights someone this strong without dying. He is really curious to test his skills against a stronger opponent without dying. The Border Butcher is impressed by Incrid's stance and confidence, being truly overwhelmed by the fact that this guy is not scared while facing someone like him, who is actually a soldier of the Special Forces. He has already seen the potential in our boy after watching his 3 duels and has concluded that he is a really interesting guy. The crowd cheers for our hero, wanting to see more of his skills, and they truly want him to humble this eagle-patched soldier. They ask everyone to chant with them to boost the morale of their battalion's soldiers. They chant that the real kings of battle are actually the infantry because they fight on the front lines. The special soldier finds this really absurd, thinking that these dumb ducks don't even know that border guards are actually part of the infantry too, and he believes that the recent victory has gotten into their heads. He immediately assumes a position to humble them with just a single blow and dashes towards Incrid at full speed. Although he is extremely fast, our hero is already at that level and uses his concentration to the fullest, evading the opponent's sword perfectly. This catches the eye of a specially ranked soldier, who is impressed by this level of concentration with such fine margins. Incrid counters his attack, and in the next second, the challenger grabs the collar of our boy with his left hand to push him to the ground. Well, this guy is clearly underestimating our hero. He might not be that skilled, but he is physically sturdy. Incrid immediately grips his hand to restrain him and uses his sword to pin him down from above. A clearly dominant performance, which would actually result in death in a real battle. But due to some hesitation, Incrid hesitates a bit, and the challenger escapes. The sword hits the ground and gets stuck there. The challenger uses this opportunity to launch another attack, but the squad leader dodges it again and instantly grabs his sword with his bare hands to pull him forward. Right then, he smashes his right knee into the challenger's gut, making him shriek in pain. As a result, the challenger backs off slightly to regain his footing. A complete dominant performance from the eternally regressing knight. He presents his hand forward with his head bowed in respect to Torres' talent, while Incrid's companions remain completely silent in the background with poker faces, as if they don't care about his decision. However, this silence tells a different story of their hidden emotions in this particular case. Oh my god, this silent language has actually been delivered because our boy declines this offer too, which shocks everyone in the room, and they look at their squad captain in disbelief. He declines the offer by telling Torres that if it's about hellish training, there is no better place than this one. Incrid's goal is quite clear in his mind, and nothing can dull his instincts in realizing this dream. Realizing his full potential is not something that satisfies him. Rather, he wants to surpass that potential to become a mind-blowing force. The next chapter begins with the soldiers resting in their sheds, and Rem is shivering and whining about the cold, although he is fully wrapped inside a blanket. He is regretting that he can't fight the cold using his axe. Suddenly, he notices that the squad leader is going out after getting ready, so he asks him to bring some hot stones on his way back. Looking at Rem's pathetic state, Incrid judges that he is completely useless outside the battlefield. The big guy tries to pull him out of the blanket, advising him to move his muscles to get warm, suggesting that he should join him in training outside. Never mind, Rem is not interested at all and orders him to leave him alone. After that, the big guy asks his squad leader to train with him, as this exercise will thaw his frozen muscles. Incrid wants to do it, but he needs to go on his new duty first, so he takes his leave. As he heads out, the axe bearer reminds him to bring the hot stones at all costs, which annoys our boy a lot. He is feeling cold too, as it has gotten a little chilly because winter has arrived suddenly. The scenes shift, and we are now in the market with a lot of hustle and bustle. The purpose of the guards is to go to battle, but with the lack of battle, they patrol the streets to safeguard the city. After a while, he is joined by two guys with cloaks, who go by the names of Jack and Bo. They will be working in Incrid's team for today. Our boy realizes that he has heard these names before, suspecting that they were part of the scouting mission. These guys are quite chatty and are singing songs of Incrid's bravery, as if they are buttering him up. Bo is really impressed by him, specifically mentioning that he got promoted to high rank all the way from the lowest rank in a single attempt, which is amazing. However, our hero remains humble and tells them that he just got lucky in this. Jack starts talking with him about the potential of a high-rank soldier, mentioning that he wonders how strong a high-rank soldier is. He wants to duel with Incrid to find out, and our boy openly welcomes him for that. On hearing that, Jack's face lights up, and he is eager to accept. They are roaming the streets in this cold weather, walking really close to our boy. Incrid notices that too, wondering why Jack is sticking so close to him, considering the fact that he is not big enough to block the wind for him. Meanwhile, both of them are ranting about having to perform this duty in such cold weather. There are a lot of people on the streets, and among them, a mysterious figure with short height and a red cloak can be seen wandering around. Our boy notices this guy straight away, and the guy loses his balance as soon as he comes close to the protagonist. Our MC tries to support him, considering him a kid, but he gets a mini heart attack when he sees the guy pulling out a dagger. With a flash move, this imposter stabs him. The MC can't believe what just happened, as he stands frozen with blood oozing out of his mouth. No fucking way. Jack and Bo are also part of this assassination, as they cover from both sides. Jack covers his mouth with a cloth to hide the blood, and Bo supports him to keep him upright. They are trying to hide him from the crowd while making excuses about having drunk too much in the morning. The red-cloaked guy reveals his face and surprises Incrid with a reference to the Greyhounds, stating that a persistent lover never forgets his target. This guy is a half-fairy assassin sent by Aspen to break the spell. The assassin delivers his final blow, dropping our boy onto the street. With this, their mission is done and dusted. They instruct their third fellow, who goes by the name of Rotten, to head back. Incrid recalls the names of this trio. He remembers that they were the wounded soldiers from the recon mission, and according to the information received from Cries, these three from the reconnaissance squad were severely injured. He concludes that they found an excuse at that point to make contact with Aspen, and our boy is killed in this 4 versus 1 assault. One of the passing ladies notices the MC lying on the ground in a pool of blood and starts shouting to alert everyone. Another day begins, and this time he has to deal with 4 guys who are there to assassinate him. He wakes up abruptly, worrying Rem in the process, who asks him the reason for this behavior. Incrid calmly answers that he wanted to start the day with some energy. He ignores Rem's request for hot stones and goes straight to Auden, who is taking a cold bath in the chilly weather. This guy is surely made of steel. He looks at his squad leader and asks the reason behind calling his name, to which Incrid responds that he mentioned a training method earlier that helps one heat up their body. Auden agrees, saying that he knows a technique called bare body training, which is essential to maintain strength in this cold weather and allows one to be ready in every situation. The MC requests him to teach the technique because he saw the guy pulling out the dagger but couldn't react in time to avoid it. The sole reason for this failure was that his body wasn't prepared to deal with that situation. Auden starts teaching him the technique, which requires him to hold the position. Incrid is fully focused on the training while thinking that his first mistake was ignoring Jack and Bo when they stuck so close to him. He devises a strategy to take 2 of them down first, but at the same time, he is afraid that he will lose the half-fairy assassin in the process. Anyway, the training is tougher than Incrid imagined, and his muscles are screaming with pain at the moment. But the big guy is motivating him by making funny comments about his sad muscles. He is now back in the streets to live his next day, and it continues in the same manner with the introduction of Jack and Bo. This time, our boy is already prepared to take them down one by one. The training has definitely worked because this time the protagonist is not wearing anything on top, which surprises both Jack and Bo. They are impressed, believing he deserves his reputation and acknowledgement. They start getting close to the hero, using the excuse of the cold weather. However, this time his body is prepared to take them on, and he is also anticipating the arrival of the half-fairy assassin. As soon as the assassin spots Incrid, he punches Jack and Bo in the face. They lose their composure as they see their plan getting shattered and proceed to draw their swords. Meanwhile, the 444 squad leader is calculating the next move of the assassin. He has only 2 possible scenarios of action for this guy, so he has time to deal with it and tries to battle out with Jack and Bo. There was also a third scenario, and within the next few seconds, a dagger pierces through his heart. The assassin uses the throwing knife technique amidst the crowd from a distance. The accuracy and precision were on point, as the dagger pierced through his heart by the time he noticed it flying through the air. This dagger was faster than the speed of sound. He falls to the ground, thinking about how he needs to prepare to deal with both melee and ranged assailants at once. The episode ends with the same lady making a fuss about a dead person, bringing everyone's attention to the scene. It also catches us up with the latest chapters of the manhwa, which I was very happy to present as soon as I could possibly manage. I only hope you guys have been enjoying my coverage of this story so far, and keep tuning in for more as new chapters get released. As always, if you're new to my channel, I sincerely hope that you stay for the ride and subscribe for a lot more content in the future, as I upload almost every single day. And if you're a regular viewer, please be sure to give a like to the video, as it really helps me out a lot. Thank you always, and I'll see you guys very soon. Until next time.